A hooded man walks away down a dark alley. Two guys sit on the steps behind him. One spits to provoke him, but it lands near the foot of the guy sitting beside him. The guy freaks out and curses, while the hooded man keeps walking without looking back. This place was the studio district, which was loud and filthy day in and out. And tucked away was this hooded man's tiny 180-square-foot rooftop home. He was exasperated to have ramen again for dinner. His name is Bong Joo-hyuk, 25 years old, unemployed and currently juggling 3 part-time jobs in the convenience store, barbecue joint, and day labor. And this boy right here is our main character. Even working like a dog, he could never save money, and the reason was simple. It was due to debt. A debt he had to pay off no matter how miserably he has to do it. He had no special skills. Simply, he's just a working body, thus, there's no bright future waiting for him. He was thinking of how his mediocre bottom-feeder life when suddenly a screen appeared in front of him and displayed that he had awakened. He freezes mid-bite, noodles hanging from his mouth. His eyes widen in shock, sweat running down his face. The hot sensation registered to him, and he drops his noodles, splashing them everywhere, and yells that he was scared out of his mind. He was confused. Awakening was considered a blessing. It was a chance to grab a jackpot and completely turn one's life around. It was even better luck than winning the lottery. But the thing was, he could only enjoy that if he's actually alive. Entering a tower was insanely dangerous. He could get torn apart by a monster, die freezing or burning in extreme climates, or from poisoning. There's also the possibility of falling into a trap and getting crushed to death, and so on. Even when he sees injustice, he generally turns a blind eye. He avoids dangerous situations at all costs to the point that he never walks under construction sites. He considers himself a bottom feeder and a nobody, and he lived that way for 25 years. And now he was being told that he had awakened, naturally. He would doubt this. He even thought that he just dozed off because he's tired. He called the status window. And it actually appeared. It showed that he's affiliated with Black Tower, Korea, and he's at level 1 with the trait summon, and he could summon 1 at the moment. His trait skills were targeted summon, random summon, and dismiss, and his common skill was to enter the tower once daily and his tower inventory. Seeing that it's all there, he started to believe that it was real. Awakened were granted an ability known as trait. The types range from swordsmanship, spearmanship, shield arts, archery, and martial arts. There's even gigantification, heavy swing, summoning, healing, and many others. Among them, summoning involves spirits, phantom beasts, golems, demonic beasts, and so on. It was generally known as the ability to command specific types of summoned creatures. It made him curious on what kind of summoner he would be. Now that he awakened, he thought of casting a skill with some flair. Our boy tried to look cool and shouted, "Summon!" Nothing happened, so he embarrassingly tried random summon. But there was nothing. He remembered that it doesn't work outside. A player's ability, including skills, were only valid inside the tower and cannot be manifested in the outside world. Aside from checking the system status window, a player was no different from an ordinary civilian while outside the tower. Anyone with an internet connection knew that. He felt like an idiot. So now, he firmly believed that there was no way a skill would actually activate outside a tower. Unexpectedly, the screen displayed the initialization of random summon. His eyes widened when he saw that. Then, a glowing door suddenly appeared, and a man showed up. He looks completely freaked out. His eyes are wide, he's sweating a lot, and his mouth is open as he panics, not understanding why it's working. Moreover, the summon was a person. The man answered that he's completely human and gave him a salute. Joo-hyuk couldn't fathom that it was a successful summon, even though he wasn't in a tower. And it's not just a normal summon like a spirit or a golem, but a human. This human smelled something. He got excited when he saw a ramen and asked if he could take 1 bite. Joo-hyuk simply replied, "Sure." The red-haired man happily took the ramen. Behind him, Joo-hyuk stands frozen, staring in disbelief. He realizes that instead of something dangerous, he summons a shameless freeloader who only takes 1 bite. The noodles were being slurped vigorously. This red-haired man sweats buckets from the hotness level. Joo-hyuk thought of him as a spice wimp for thinking that mild udon was spicy. Moving on from that, he was still baffled on how a skill successfully activated outside the tower, and a human summon at that. He never heard of such a thing. He opened the status window, which showed him that he could summon humans and demi-humans on the range that they were R grade, rare, S R grade, super rare, SS R grade, special super rare, up to LSSR, Legend Special Super Rare. Aside from that, seamless communication was possible between the summoner and the summoned in all situations. It was news to him that there were rares. He felt like he's pulling for game characters or something. Then, the system informed him that he was bound by the 3 mandates. The 3 mandates of the summons are: first, the summon shall protect the summoner's life above all else; second, the summon shall obey the summoner's commands absolutely; and third, in the event of a conflict between Mandate 1 and Mandate 2, Mandate 1 takes precedence. He likes the sound of absolute obedience. Then it made him curious on who exactly was the human that he had just summoned. The details flashed on the screen. It showed that the man was the Cruel Guild's insane assassin, and his name was John Cossack. Grade was SR, super rare, and he's a human assassin. His manifestation limit was 6 hours with no satisfaction rating, and 3 hours cooldown applied after dismissal. Aside from this, he's the Cruel Assassin Guild's biggest headache. Basically, he's a complete lunatic. However, his mission success rate was 99%. He even succeeded in assassinating a 5th Circle Dark Mage. The random information flowed to Juyok's head, causing him pain. Until he sensed something. He was falling from nothingness, and when he almost hit the ground, he saw an assassin coming. He braced himself, but the assassin just passed through him without even noticing him. Seeing the scene before him, he realized what it was. It was John's past. He skillfully beheaded some men, but he finds him strange, because he wrapped the heads with a red ribbon like a gift. It could be why he was called insane. John glanced behind. His end was the result of a single failure. He visited the room of the assassination's target, but this target was the Empire's strongest swordmaster. Before he could do anything, his body was already cut in half, and that was his final memory. At the present moment, John went behind Juyok and inquired what he was thinking about. That spooked Juyok. Juyok stumbles back in shock. He slips and flails his arms, shouting in surprise as he loses his balance. John didn't mean to scare him. He just wanted to ask if he had any orders for him. Juyok forced himself not to be scared, especially when it was stated clearly that the summoned show absolute obedience to the summoner's commands. He took a deep breath and ordered him to clear away the ramen pot and wipe the table too. John had no trouble following those orders. Juyok noticed that he was fast and hadn't had a single complaint. He realized that John had done everything he says. He clarified with him if absurd requests were out of the question. John simply replied that he obeys his summoner's words unconditionally. He tested that by making him bark for him. He wanted him to act like a dog. John stopped wiping the table, and it made Juyok scared that he had crossed the line. Especially when John was a powerhouse in his past life, so his pride must be immense. It made him worried that he would snap. But John barked happily, and it left him speechless. With a dumbfounded expression, he gave a thumbs up as he confirmed this absolute obedience. Suddenly, someone banged on his door. They knew he was inside and demanded that he open up. He had forgotten that it was the day the interest was due. Immediately, he told John to get up. Apparently, Juyok borrowed 10 million won. No bank would lend it to him, so out of desperation, he went to a loan shark. His father had slipped on ice and fractured his hip, and he needed the money for surgery, plus his little brother's college tuition. He had no other choice. He thought he could pay it back quickly, but the principal remains untouched, and he has already paid back over 5 million won just in interest. He knew it was a stupid move, but he had no other choice. Even if he were to go back, he would have made the same choice. They insist on seeing him to check if he's okay. He whipped his head towards John's direction. John already had his dagger out and was ready to sever the man's head in his command. But that wasn't Juyok's intention. Seeing the way he acts, he knew he'd cause a disaster. He told him to hide in the bathroom and not move a muscle there while keeping his mouth shut. John wanted to know if he's even allowed to breathe. He was relieved when Juyok replied yes. As soon as Juyok opened the front door, a hand was wrapped on his nape. This scary-looking man confirmed that he looked healthy and expressed that he was worried he might be sick or something when the interest payment didn't come through. Juyok didn't dare to move and simply apologized that he forgot. And then he informed him that he just sent the transfer. The man told him that if it was too tough, he shouldn't force himself and suggested that if he's desperate, he could always carve out an organ and sell it. He added that life gets a whole lot easier with just one kidney. One of those thugs suggested that the punk has a little brother. The man agreed that the brother works too, especially that the younger they are, the better the price. Hearing that made Juyok's face turn grim. The man noticed his expression and commented that it looked like he was ready to take a swing at him. When he looked up, he had an awkward smile and told the man that he would never do that. That man warned him to watch himself unless he wanted to die without a soul ever knowing. And then he slammed the door and left. Ju-hyuk lets out a sigh of relief. John came out of the bathroom. He was impressed that he stayed perfectly hidden and quiet. John replied that it was because it was his command. Suddenly, Ju-hyuk felt tired. He had double shifts at work, an awakening, a human summon, and a visit from loan sharks to top it off. The debt made him consider climbing the tower, but he knew even if money was great, there was no way a coward like him could survive climbing the tower. John asked what he should do. He asked him if there was something he wanted to do, and if he wanted to return, he would dismiss the summon for him. John asked if he could watch some TV. Ju-hyuk had no idea how he knew about TV and ramen, but he's fine with it. He allowed him to do that, so John planned to watch a few episodes of a drama. John watched while he went to bed. Ju-hyuk thought that even though he was a summoned being, feeling someone's presence wasn't so bad. And he actually felt comforted, because he had worked himself to death. Sleep took over him. And the next day, his alarm rang at 8 a.m. He got up and saw John wasn't there, so he thought the summon was dismissed. He wouldn't be surprised if that's what happened since he had a memory of seeing the system window in his sleep. He got up to go prepare for work when the news was shown. While he was brushing his teeth, it was reported on the news that in Jongno-gu, Seoul, all the offices of the illegal loan shark firm, Smile Cash had encountered a gruesome murder. That caught his attention. And when he heard that 3 victims were beheaded, he dropped his toothbrush. On top of that, the victims' heads were found wrapped in red ribbons. He immediately thought of John Cossack. He turned pale when he realized he just summoned a total psychopath murderer. The shocking Smile Cash murder was major news at that time. Their bodies lay in their own pool of blood, and it was evident that one finger of a man was broken, and their heads were displayed like presents. When Ju-hyuk saw it, he got extremely anxious for being fucked. Looking at it again, he couldn't deny that it was made by John. While he was at work, he saw a head with a ribbon, and it was the loan shark's head being placed in the table to be calculated. It shocked him. All he could see now was this headless torso holding a head with a ribbon and the other heads on the shelves. It made him back away when he hit the shelves behind him. But, well, he was hallucinating. The customer asked if he's okay. He apologized and assisted her at once. After the shift, he realized that he couldn't work at his state. He decided to take a break from all his part-time jobs tomorrow. He sighed, as he wondered if people were dying because of him. At his home. He looked at John's details. At the catalog, he was branded as the Cruel Guild's crazy assassin, and his rank was super rare. Type is a human assassin. He has a manifestation limit of 6 hours, no satisfaction rating, and re-summon cooldown for 3 hours. Ji-hyuk knew that he wouldn't harm a summoner, but it was still scary for him. He summoned him, but the screen showed him something else. He was being requested to leave a satisfaction rating for John. He realized now what it was in the catalog. He told him to watch TV, but he went and committed murder that he didn't even order, so he wanted to give him 1 star for being so insolent. His annoyance to him was shown by him putting up a middle finger. That was what he wanted to give, but he knew he shouldn't be that heartless, so he gave him 3 stars instead. Since his mother's job was a rental water purifier coordinator, he knew very well how heartbreaking a low satisfaction rating is. After that, John was summoned. John greeted him with a smile and thanked him for the 3 stars. He promised to work harder. Looking at how innocent he looks, Ju-hyuk would even doubt if he had killed people. He straightforwardly asked him if he killed those men who went into his house. John proudly admitted that he took care of them last night. Ju-hyuk gasped when he confirmed that he's the culprit. He became terrified when he realized that the man in front of him was a murderer. Suddenly, his stomach churns and his heart races. He calmed himself down since he was absolutely sure that John wouldn't harm him. He asked him how he had done that when he wouldn't even know where their office was. John revealed that he planted a mark of pursuit when those bastards barged into his house. He wondered if that was something like a skill. He asked why he would go that far. John reasoned that they were a threat, so it was better to deal with them in advance. Ju-hyuk argued that he didn't even order him. Then John revealed that it was because of the summon's 3 laws Article 3. It stated that if Law 1 and 2 conflict, Law 1 is prioritized. Simply put, absolute obedience, however, if the summoner is in a dangerous situation, it could be ignored. Ju-hyuk asked if he would disobey if the summoner ordered him to kill him. John replied that he's correct. He told him that there was no actual threat, so he suggests that it was an arbitrary judgment. John agreed that Article 3 could be interpreted broadly. John's view was that those bastards were risk factors that would inevitably threaten the summoner's life someday, and this was a very reasonable judgment. Juhyok argued that it was psycho-like. He realized what he just said and apologized. John was fine with it since he had heard such words often. It's not that Juhyok doesn't understand, but it could be an extremely dangerous situation. For example, he just walked on the street with John and accidentally bumped shoulders into someone looking like a thug, and that person would probably threaten him with words like, "Do you want to die? I'll pluck your eyes out," but doesn't actually mean to do it. But according to John's interpretation, they would end up with a ribbon on their head without their body. He was in such a predicament. John admits that he was wrong. He asked why he's suddenly kneeling. He explained to him that murder wasn't for his sake. Rather, it could turn into a difficult situation because of it. John reasoned that no one would know. He expects him not to do it again, but John couldn't guarantee that Juhyok made him promise that only do it when a knife was actually pointed at his throat. He didn't want John doing things like that based on speculations. John promised to judge the situation well. His answer was energetic. Since they're done with this conversation, he wants him to go back now. But John brought up something. He asked him if he's not climbing the tower, and Juhyok was caught off guard with this question. He knew that climbing the tower was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but he was scared, and it was too dangerous. He could get killed. He inquired if there was another summoner who summoned him just like he did. John replied that there was, and that person was a truly strong and brave person. Juhyok felt ashamed. He realized that someone uses their ability, awakening, to save the world. He admitted that he doesn't have the courage to risk his life. John was about to say something about him, and he cuts him off saying that he's a pathetic coward. But John said that he's the best summoner. He wasn't expecting that. John told him that the greatest virtue of a summoner was safety first, that being brave was poison. A brave summoner was dangerous, and they'll never know when he'll die. And when he died, they couldn't come out either. John assured him that he would do all the dirty work. He encouraged him to keep playing it safe and live to a ripe old age. That night, he slept fitfully while worrying about whether to climb the tower or not. He reasoned that tower climbing wasn't for him. He just wanted to live gratefully that the debt disappeared along with the debt collectors. He planned to do just safe and ordinary work, and thought that if he lives diligently like that, everything would get better. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was his father. He asked if he had been doing his rehab diligently. He was informed that they had to move to a bigger hospital, and his mother was getting fired. His father told him not to worry too much, and that he only called because there was no contract from him. He told him that he'll make time to visit next time, and they would eat together. His father told him not to overwork himself. The call eventually ended, and right after that, he put on the safety personnel full set. He told himself to just go to the first floor to peek for a moment and come out, and if it was dangerous, he could just exit immediately. The timing was right since he took the time off from all his part-time jobs. He was about to do the summoning. But he remembered that he doesn't necessarily have to insist on the crazy John. He thought of summoning something else, and maybe a legendary special super rare rank would pop up. But a random summon was unavailable. It was on cooldown, and he still has 28 days, 11 hours, 8 minutes, and 37 seconds remaining. He didn't know that there was a cooldown, and it was a whole month, so he had no choice but to summon John. He wondered if John knew that he tried to summon someone else. He couldn't look him in the eye. He informed John that they'll be entering the tower. John's initial reaction was that he's brave, but told him to cancel that and he shouldn't be brave. Juhyok assured him that he only plans to get a taste of it and get out. John told him to throw away those crude things, and instead, he would become his tool and hunting dog. He planned to do everything once inside the tower and assured Juhyok that he won't have to lift a finger. He was asked if he would like to enter the Korea Black Tower. The current accessible floor was the first floor. He confirmed their entry, and it was like they were falling. He screamed loudly while John hung on to his clothes. Everything suddenly shifts. Juhyok is pulled into a glowing digital space, his body falling as streams of light and numbers rush past him. Juhyok gasps in fear. His face goes pale, eyes squeeze shut, as he panics while being pulled through the glowing space. John grabs onto him, holding him tightly as they're pulled downward together, and they safely reach the ground. He saw that the first floor was completely a wasteland. Suddenly, he felt sick and vomited on the side. John asked if he's okay and told him that he'll get used to it soon. After that, John led the way, and they moved out of the safe zone. The system improved Juyok's physical abilities according to level. Characteristics and combat skills had been available for use. Now, he knew what it felt like being a player. Even though he's level 1, he felt quite strong. The first floor mission was to defeat 5 tough-skinned fatty grubs within 2 hours. Currently, they were at 0 out of 5, and if he could fail due to death or forfeiting the mission. John saw them up ahead. Juyok knew that the first floor was a place to test one's skills. The tough-skinned fatty grub was like a scarecrow. Concept. Its attack power was almost non-existent, but they say its skin was tough, so it's hard to kill easily. Other players managed to catch one in about 30 minutes at best, and now he's a player too. He was determined to try catching one. John asked if there was a need for him to suffer unnecessarily. Juyok approached one, and then he remembered he needed a weapon. He turned to borrow one from John, but the tough-skinned fatty grubs had risen, and it loomed over him. He turned pale, and he turned towards it. He asked John for help. John affirmed that it was a wise decision. John dashed towards it, and in just one hit, its head exploded. Then he charges towards the others while telling Juyok to stand back. He had his daggers in his hands and he looked thrilled. He threw those daggers and hit several tough-skinned fatty grubs simultaneously. Then he activated a blade explosion, and those that were stabbed all exploded. Juyok was amazed. It was an instant kill. With that, he succeeded in the first floor mission, and the reward was 100 magic stones. He also received an S++ clear rank for the first floor of the Black Tower, Korea. That gave him a platinum badge. He was in bliss when he realized it was too easy. He imagined getting rich soon, but he didn't know it yet. In some parts of Korea, people's screens showed up. Some were training when it happened. The others were in a club. That same notice popped up for every player in South Korea. Now he could challenge the second floor. He was transported out of Black Tower, Korea. Now he knew he was to be returned immediately after clearing the floor. It still made him sick. He checked the time and saw that it only took 5 minutes. John praised him for the good work. He answered that he didn't do anything but to stand still, and John affirmed that it was the right thing to do. Juyok heard that others barely finish when they're exhausted from beating grubs to death, but it was too simple. He checked the magic stone that he got. It was his first time seeing the real thing. Magic stone was an important resource indispensable in the current industry. The price has dropped a lot compared to the early days of the tower creation, so now it's about 50,000 won per 100 grams. Since 20 years had passed since Black Towers appeared in countries all over the world, most ordinary people know the general common sense about the towers, but a platinum badge was something he had never heard of. But regardless, he was pumped since he earned 50,000 won in just 3 minutes. John went to watch a drama. Juyok ordered some food and invited John to eat. John smelled the food. He asked if it was spicy jokbal. Juyok told him that he ordered regular jokbal because he said he can't eat spicy food, but he smelled something spicy. Juyok realized that he had 0 tolerance for spicy food. John happily ate and thanked him for his grace. Juyok wondered if that's his usual way of speaking. John asked what he meant, and he explained that he shortened the endings with siumda and imda. He explained that it was because he hung out with his previous summoner for a long time. Juyok realized that it was something like an ex-boyfriend's influence. In their case, it would be ex-summoner's influence. John told him that if it was uncomfortable to hear, he would fix it. He replied that it was fun to keep hearing it. Juyok had become certain that the tower wasn't dangerous at all, or rather, it was doable. The next morning, he posted an alpha male's daily routine. It was his schedule. He had a convenience store during the day, charcoal grill restaurant at night. He decided not to do the part-time labor job he was doing in between. Instead, he would be heading home and doing tower clearing with John. So, that day, he summoned John again, who had received another 5-star rating. Juyok admits that if he could give 10 points, he would do it. John was glad that he was satisfied. He inquired if the satisfaction rating was important. John explained that the better the rating, the more benefits arise. For example, the manifestation time, rank increase, and needless to say, the chance to receive calls. They entered the second floor of the Black Tower. The second floor mission was to defeat 10 quick-witted fatty grubs. The time limit is 2 hours and his current status was 0 out of 10. If he dies or forfeits, he fails. He realized that the second floor grubs were tricky because they move around everywhere, and they were faster than he thought. He asked what he should do on the second floor. John told him that there won't even be time for that, because it will be done in 3 minutes. He told him that he'd finish quickly and escort him home. Ju-yok suggested that they eat chicken and have some beer too when they got back. John thanked him for that, and then he went to cut those quick-witted fatty grubs. Ju-yok thinks it was insane. He finished the second floor mission and leveled up. The reward was a 200 grams magic stone. He was notified that he had achieved an S++ clear rank for the second floor of the Black Tower in Korea. He was awarded with a platinum badge. Receiving S++ again made him wonder if it was allowed to be that easy. It was just too fast, and he can even go in and out before going to his morning part-time job. The next day, they proceeded to do the third floor mission, which was to defeat 10 ice-cold fatty grubs. John told him that his landing had improved, and in a few minutes, they succeeded in the third floor mission. His reward was a 300 grams magic stone, and again, he achieved an S++ clear rank for the third floor of the Black Tower, Korea. He was awarded with another platinum badge, and then the same success happened on the fourth floor. It was also duplicated on the fifth floor. He'd collected 5 S++ rank platinum badges, and that entitles him for a special perk. The special perk was an awakening trait enhancement. Due to the special perk effect, the number of simultaneous summons increases to 2. The status screen showed Ju-yok was now at level 6, and he could simultaneously summon 2. His catalog was empty. His trait skills were designated Summon, Random Summon, and Summon Release. His general skills were Tower Entry once a day, and Tower Exclusive Inventory. He doesn't have any combat skills. It means that he could keep one more person with him, when John alone was already streamrolling everything. He realized that an S++ clear reward was insanely good. It could turn into a long-term battle going forward, and he would be way safer. He has 20 days left to use Random Summon again. He decided to hold out until then. Then after 20 days, all 3 of them could go together. While he enjoys the free ride, those 2 could keep breaking through, and tomorrow was another climb to the 6th floor. The next day, at Hanamdong, Seoul, Republic of Korea Awakener Management Administration. It looked like the 2 men on the couch were waiting for something. A man was wondering if it would appear in the morning or evening or maybe late at night. The woman in the suit approached him and asked if he was waiting for the announcement. He was startled. He turned red and told her to stop reading people like that. This man is Jeon Gwang-il, an Awakener Management Administration team leader, and the woman is Lee Min-ae, an Awakener Management Administration deputy director. He asked if a new announcement was up. She replied yes and shared that it was the Black Tower, Korea, 6th floor S++ rank clear. The Black Tower's global announcements have been ringing repeatedly lately, and every single one contains news of an S++ rank clear. Gwang-il could tell that it's definitely one person. Floors 1 to 5 were cleared in order. So he thought that it was without a doubt the owner of unprecedented, overwhelming talent. And if every floor were cleared in S++ rank, his thought was cut off when someone slammed the table. It was Park Gyeong-soo, director of the Awakener Management Administration. He said that the highest in Korea was rank A. They didn't even know higher ranks existed, or that an S++ clear triggered a global announcement. In that day's international society, player naturalization was quite common. There were even secret abductions happening behind the scenes. And so before another country snatches them away, they had to find the player immediately. He ordered them to keep close watch on every newly registered player. 2 days later, Ju-yok's goal was the 8th floor. He was glad to clear 1 floor a day without any trouble. Up to the 10th floor, it's basically the beginner zone, so everything was going smoothly. The floor was a swamp, and their mission was to defeat 10 red thorn frog warriors. The frog warrior attacked them. John took out his dagger, and in no time, he slashed those warriors continuously. The system notified Ju-yok of his completion of the 8th floor mission. His reward was an 800-gram magic stone and 5 tower exclusive healing potion. He had achieved an S++ rank on the Black Tower, Korea 8th floor. Platinum badge had also been awarded. John affirmed him with his great work, but he didn't even do anything every day. John told him that just entering the tower was the hardest part. He told him that thanks to him, they were able to climb easily. John reminded him not to let his guard down, since after the late 10th floors, it won't be so easy. It was another 3 minutes clear, so he thought of giving him a present. He gave him allowance and told him to go out, have fun, and eat something too, since he still has plenty of manifestation time left. But he reminded him not to cause any trouble. But John refused him, and it left him baffled. John explained that he couldn't leave his side, so he'll just watch TV at home. He realized that absolute obedience applies to stuff like that too. He suggested we order some chicken instead, and that made John excited. John made the call and ordered something good. Definitely, it wasn't spicy. While he's doing that, Juyak decides to check the rewards. A new reward as a tower exclusive healing potion. He set it aside for John. He placed the stones on his table and wondered what he should do with it. He already had 3.6 kilograms in his inventory. If he sells them, it's about 1.8 million won. He deemed it was time to think about cashing out. Eventually, day 10 of climbing the Black Tower arrived. It meant that they were approaching the 10th floor. Juyak just got home from his part-time job. While changing clothes, he pondered on how at first he thought of just dipping his toes into the tower, but he had been climbing one floor a day without missing a beat. Yesterday's 9th floor, the jungle man eating corpse flower, was easy too. He expected to clear the missions given, but the S++ clear rewards were such a bonus. He felt so reassured to the point that he had forgotten that John was a crazy assassin who killed 3 people. He summoned him. He gave him 5 points again. And due to continued accumulation of top ratings, John's manifestation time increases by 1 hour. Seeing that, Juyak deemed that it was worth it giving the highest score. John made a huge heart using his arms and thanked him. Now he could support him for 1 more hour. They entered the Black Tower, Korea. Physical abilities have been enhanced to match his level and trait, and combat skills have been made available. At around the 10th floor, he could really feel it. He was pertaining to the recalibration of physical abilities inside the tower. He was overflowing with strength, and a mysterious mana stirring in his lower abdomen. It led him to think that he had become an untamable wild horse now. Seeing himself that way, he confidently told John that he would help out too. John doesn't want him to. If he would have even just a scratch, John would smash his head into the ground. But he insists since he's already a wild horse. John tries to convince him by saying that his encouragement and praise were more than enough. He kept saying that he wanted to fight together, but when he turned his head, he saw a huge eye. It was a large insect. He got frightened. It made him wonder how other players even kill it. He uttered that sending 2 people out to kill a mere insect does hurt a human pride. John had no idea what he's suddenly saying, and clarified that there was nothing about pride damaging about it, but he argued that it hurts his pride a lot, seeing how scary that 10th floor boss was. He let John do the fighting. The large praying mantis attacked John. John jumped and ran along its body. He looked serious, and with his swift movements, he started slashing its body into pieces. Just like that, they had successfully completed the mission on the 10th floor. The reward was 1 kilogram of magic stones. Again, he achieved an S++ rank clear and got awarded with a platinum badge. John approached him and told him that the mission was complete. It gained them access to the 11th floor. They got transported out of the Black Tower. Now that he received 1 kilogram of magic stones, he now has a total of 5.5 kilograms. And since he already got a perk at 5 platinum badges, as expected, when he got 10, he received another perk. He looked forward to it. His perk was to copy 1 skill possessed by a summoned entity. The list were Blade Explosion, Shock Break, Vile Ambush, Poison Dagger, Shadow Step, Disruption, Stealth, Invisibility, Polymorph. John noticed him and suggested that it should be a Shadow Step without a doubt. At first he was confused about what he was talking about. Then John clarified that for the skill copy, he didn't have to think about it. He had to learn Shadow Step. He asked for the reason, and he told him that it was convenient for running away. If something happens to him, Juyak would be able to move fast and quietly. He felt offended that John suggested that he run away. He wondered if he looked like someone who would abandon everyone just to survive alone. He chose the Shadow Step. He agreed that fast footwork was genuinely seriously important in combat. He thought of the saying that footwork was the life of a fight. He wondered if it worked in the real world too, so he tested it outside his house. But it didn't. He complained about the inconsistency, because the summoning worked and yet the skill didn't. The next day, it was the 11th day of tower climbing. He called the Awakener Management Administration call center. He reported that he had awakened. He was celebrated and informed that a government staff would visit his home to give him support. Before he could tell his address, they already confirmed that they would arrive shortly. After this ordinary citizen contacted the Awakener Administration to sell magic stones, he felt drained. It was the bravest decision of his 25-year life. Meanwhile, Awakener Administration staff were outside. Director Lee rode the car with Gwang-il. Gwang-il asked about the awakener who contacted them from Daegu yesterday. She replied that she doesn't think they were the owner of the S++ record. Gwang-il started to wonder if that person truly exists. She informed him that another awakening request came in and asked if he would come too. He replied yes, since they had to run themselves ragged while they could. If it was the person they were looking for, he planned to bring that person into their elite team, even if they have to pour out the best benefits the administration could offer. Concurrently, Juhyok was cleaning his home. The Awakener Management Administration staff arrived as expected. He opened the door and invited them in. Team leader John Gwang-il introduced himself, and he introduced Deputy Director Lee Min-ae. He told her that she's a player too, so Juhyok could freely ask her anything. Seeing that a woman came too, it made him more nervous. She got too close to him and it made him blush. And she knew at once that it was him. The S++. Juhyok panics and screams, throwing his arms up in shock as he reacts without thinking. And then her statement dawned on him. It made him wonder if there was some awakener identification method that he doesn't know about. He opted to deny it for now and act natural. But his actions betrayed him. He was stiff like a robot when he replied that he heard about it, but it wasn't him. His action was a textbook behavior of someone lying, and it didn't escape her eyes. Gwang-il smacked her while telling her not to probe people. She dodged his hand and replied that she would. He apologized for being rude to him. Juhyok assumed that she was just testing him. A cute, chibi character pops up. It's a small black tower with wings, holding a star wand, and striking a playful pose, introducing itself as Tabi, the mascot of the Korea Black Tower. And it discussed the tower, pitch black and ominous in appearance, with an overwhelming size that can't even be compared to the tallest buildings on Earth. It appeared all over the world overnight 20 years ago. Every country revealed themselves and deployed soldiers and scientists, but no one could approach it. It was physically impossible to access, as if blocked by an invisible barrier. The question on what exactly it was had been answered when players appeared. The tower has a game-like structure where players climb it floor by floor. Players were just like ordinary people outside the tower, but inside the tower, they could wield powerful abilities and skills. They upgrade equipment using various rewards obtained from the tower and continue greatly to the global economy. There was a question on what happens if it wasn't climbed. Basically, if the new upper floors were not updated within a 6-month period, a countdown begins. And eventually the tower collapses. 3 years ago, that's how the city of Mumbai in India disappeared. It was known that each country has between 1 and 3 black towers, and Korea has 1. It was located deep in the mountains of Gangwon province. The number of players was estimated at 0.01% to 0.02% of the population, so that was around 5,000 to 10,000 people. There weren't that many. Still, Korea's Black Tower progression was going smoothly. With the 65th floor cleared, it was the second highest record after the United States' 66th floor. But there was nothing to worry, because their society has heroes called players. Just as humanity once pioneered new continents, humanity today was exploring and understanding the Black Tower. And the Awakened was the hope of the era. So they were encouraged to register as an official player, and they might become a hero too. That concludes the mandatory viewing material. Now Gwang-il would have to ask for some verifications. He asked if he was truly awakened. Juhyok replied yes, and shared that he entered the tower and had done some clearing too. He showed them the magic stones. Then he was asked how many floors he had reached, and he replied 10. Gwang-il and Minna subtly looked at each other because that was the same floor as the S++ grade record. Now she started to suspect him. She asked him if he heard about the recent issue called the Global Notice. He tried to act natural as he answered that he had heard it too, and yet he doesn't know who it was. He added that he seemed like an amazing player. Given his stiff acting, Gwang-il told him that there was no need to be nervous, but they wondered if it was just excessive nervousness. They started to get suspicious. They proceeded in the contract terms. The government manages players by dividing them into 2 groups. The first group is the elite climbing team, and the second is the general climbing team. The general team plans and acts on their schedules. It was like being a freelancer. On the other hand, the elite team maintains a much closer relationship with the government's Awakener Management Administration. There were obligations for high floor raids, but they could receive various forms of support and benefits. One of them was the personal protection outside the tower, because the players were just ordinary people outside the tower. Also, if he belongs to the elite team, he would receive a basic annual salary. Juhyok imagined what would happen had it been revealed that he's the S++ record holder. The media would flock at him and ask him about being a loner in Hanam-dong, an affluent neighborhood in the county. He would rather die than get that kind of attention. Gwang-il informs him that when he applies to the elite team, he would have to record his raid footage using the body cam that they provided. But to their surprise, Ju-hyuk didn't want to apply for the elite team. He's already satisfied with the general team. Gwang-il couldn't understand since the conditions were better. He answered that he didn't have talent and that he's scared. Stopping at a reasonable floor and getting reasonable rewards was enough for him. Gwang-il encouraged him to think over it slowly, but he was firm that he had made a decision. Min-ae sighed, thinking that it was another miss this time too. There were plenty of people who stop at a certain point and farm safely, but this was the first time someone has said it bluntly during testing. That kind of coward makes him unqualified. Even if he applied for the elite team, he's the type that must never be accepted. The most important virtue of the elite team was the will to climb. They respected his decision. Then Gwang-il requested him to enter the tower because it was the final procedure they needed to confirm awakening. And since it would be a waste to lose his once-per-day entry, he suggested that he do some clearing while he's in there. Ju-hyuk could sense that he was subtly probing and trying to confirm whether he reached S++ until the end. He agreed to clear while he's there, but he warned them that he usually uses up the full-time limit, so it might take close to 2 hours. It was fine for those two since it was part of their job. Min-ae encouraged him to take his time and not feel pressured. He prepared himself. Before he goes, he tells them to watch TV and grab drinks from the fridge, because he might take a while. And then he left. After seeing him vanish, Gwang-il confirmed that he's truly awakened. He asked Min-ae what she thinks. She couldn't comment on his talent, but she noticed how extremely timid he was. His speech and actions were completely meek, so she expects him to give up on the 11th floor. He asked why. She had experienced the 11th floor and it tested a player's fear. He asked if it was the long-tailed tunnel centipede. It wasn't a difficult monster, but the player would have to kill 100 of them with that disgusting appearance. And she thinks someone fearful couldn't do that. She was certain that he would return to the safe zone and abandon the mission. Gwang-il knew that her predictions had been accurate so far. He planned to call the director already since it looked like another bust this time. Meanwhile, at the tower, Ju-hyuk summoned John. John thanked him for summoning him. The 11th floor mission was to defeat 100 long-tailed tunnel centipedes within the time limit of 3 hours. Current condition was 0 out of 100, and death or abandonment leads to failing the mission. Ju-hyuk felt disgusted with the centipede, and 100 of that too. John told him that he would take care of it quickly, like in 5 minutes. But Ju-hyuk wants him to hunt as slowly as possible, like for over an hour, so no S++ clear record was set. He shared that there were eyes watching outside, so he'll also dismiss the summon while inside the tower. John replied that he understood his intention. He knew that showing entry was enough, and yet he insisted on clearing too. He planned it so that his record would be a mess, and he'd be able to escape the S++ record holder net. Then John started killing centipedes, but he thought it was going too fast he instructed him to go slower. The hunting speed has slowed down significantly, and so he thought at that rate, it would be fine. A centipede suddenly rose from his feet, and that threw him off balance. They were swarming on him, so he had to use a skill to run away, but his body won't respond. John looked panicked when he saw him, so he rushed towards him and cleared the centipedes around him. He was annoyed that they dared to attack the summoner. He killed simultaneously. But Ju-hyuk realized he was going too fast. He told him to go slowly. He ordered him to go as slow as possible, but John refused because he prioritized his life. But Ju-hyuk didn't want him to try that hard. Suddenly, the system notified that the floor was cleared with rank S++, and a platinum badge was awarded. He now has access to the 12th floor. He had this deadpan, unimpressed expression while being transported outside the tower. 5 minutes had passed. Min-ae expected that it was about time he gave up and came out. But to their surprise, the notice appeared. It states that Black Tower, Korea, 11th floor, clear grade S++ has been achieved. And then Ju-hyuk showed up. Min-ae couldn't believe it. Gwang-il asked her what was wrong. She murmured that at the exact moment Ju-hyuk appeared, the S++ grade for the 11th floor popped up. But something's not right. Our boy looked serious. Out of nowhere, our boy Ju-hyuk muttered to himself that he didn't want to go that far. With his summon behind him, Ju-hyuk uttered, You two will have to be silenced. He ordered John to bind those two immediately, but he beheaded them instead. It made Juyak scream out loud. He was terrified when he questioned him on who said to cut their heads off. The heads that were wrapped in ribbon called out to him, and he kept apologizing. But that was just his hallucination. In reality, they just sat in front of each other, and he started having cold sweat out of the blue. He realized that he unknowingly had a delusion. He composed himself. Gwang-il expressed again that their elite team absolutely needs a talent like him. He forces an awkward smile. He's sweating and clearly nervous, talking fast as he tries to explain things away and pretend everything is just a misunderstanding. He suggests that it just overlapped with another player clearing the 11th floor. Gwang-il replied that the timing was too perfect for that. He insists that it was a coincidence and denies that it wasn't him. Gwang-il asked him again if it wasn't really him, and he replied yes. Gwang-il gave up and told him that since awakening has been confirmed, he'll prepare the contract. But to his surprise, he received an elite contract when he clearly asked for a general contract. Gwang-il boasted that it's on a different dimension from the usual cases. So to speak, it was the only contract of its kind in the industry. Because it was an ultra-elite contract, it states an annual salary of 12 billion won plus real estate provided, VVIP protocol, and thorough security. On top of that, immunity privilege. At that point, the player was almost above the law. Juyak realized that it's practically nobility. It was shared to him that currently, it's a benefit only received by the #1 ranked player in Korea, Yoo Cheol-min. He urged him to take a look to see that it includes every benefit the nation can offer. But Juyak replied no. He was firm that if it wasn't a general contract, he wouldn't be a player. Gwang-il asked why he's refusing so vehemently. He replied that he hates receiving attention. If he gets attention, it would be burdensome. And if it's burdensome, it would be stressful. And it weighs on his heart. They realized that he's an extreme introvert. Also, even if climbing the tower was fun, he's just on the 11th floor and the future was just too uncertain. Gwang-il realized that it would just be better to back off for now. He agreed to proceed with a general contract. Juyak knew that if others would see it, they would be frustrated and ask why they wouldn't just coolly stamp the elite contract and climb while receiving benefits. But an elite contract comes with responsibilities equal to what he receives. Even if the player would want to quit clearing floors, they can't because it's a team solely for climbing uncleared upper floors. And he doesn't want such a burden. He's fine as long as he can make a living more comfortably than before. At Seoul Hanamdong Awakening Management Bureau, Director Park received information different from the interim report. It was Gwang-il who told him that Juyak was a timid player with no will to climb. He confirmed if such a person was an S++ rank achiever. Gwang-il replied yes. The director couldn't comprehend what's happening. He admits that Juyak's personality itself was peculiar. He described him to be a timid type to a rare degree. Director Park asked if they had mistook the person, and Min-ae replied that it was impossible. The timing matched too perfectly. Then the director insists that being timid doesn't matter when it comes to exceptional talent. He wanted them to drag him into the elite team no matter what. Gwang-il accepted the task and took it seriously. Meanwhile, Juyak was fuming because he already said no. He was scolding John. He was acting angry, but it was draining him. He warned him that if he did that one more time, there would be no mercy. They entered the 12th floor of the Black Tower, Korea. The mission was to defeat 20 ice-snow icicle spear weasels within the time limit of 3 hours. Juyak summoned John and reminded him to be absolutely slow. Since he saw John answer pleasantly, he had hoped that he could trust him this time. If he clears it normally from then on, he knew the management bureau would lose interest in him too. But the place was so cold. He came prepared, but it was colder than he thought. He tried to endure, but John saw his complexion. John got worried and asked if he's okay. He answered that it was bearable. Immediately, John promised to finish as soon as possible and escort him to a warm room. He was about to say he's fine, so he had to do it slowly, but John had already sped off. John told him that if he's not careful, he'll catch a cold, and a cold is an incurable disease, so he deemed that his life was in danger. With that in mind, he killed those monsters one after another, as fast and swift as he could. The system notified him that he earned a perk for collecting 15 platinum badges. The perk was an item called Energy Shield Kit, and it was sent to the tower inventory. Our MC immediately put the bracelet on. This Energy Shield Kit protects the user with a shield that absorbs damage. Once it absorbs a certain amount, it disappears, and it can only be used again after 5 hours. Its effectiveness scales with his level. A barrier slowly enveloped him. It was practically a full suit of armor, and the fact that it didn't have a tower-exclusive modifier meant he could use the shield in the real world, too. He wondered how much it would sell for. He estimated it could be worth around 2 to 3 billion. For a moment, he thought about selling it immediately and retiring from climbing the tower, but then he realized that better rewards might come if he climbed higher. Excited, he asked John if they could clear the 16th floor right away with an S++ rank. John said a clear was possible, but warned him to be cautious since he couldn't guarantee an S++ rank. Juyak didn't expect that answer. Now, he didn't know what to do. John, who was casually eating cookies, asked if something was wrong. Juyak started thinking about selling the bracelet instead. Meanwhile, Director Park grew worried because the global announcements for S++ clears had stopped for quite some time. Min-A replied that it had already been 15 days. Gwang-il added that they checked the records and found the player was currently stuck on the 15th floor. Director Park exploded in anger. He complained about how cruel it was for God to give such incredible talent to such a timid player. Gwang-il admitted that the difficulty rises sharply starting from the 16th floor, but he didn't believe Juyak had given up. He suggested waiting a little longer. Just then, he received a message. It was from Juyak. He said he was heading to the Awakener Management Administration to use the player shop. At that moment, Director Park finally realized something, that the player was farming the 15th floor to gather funds for new items. Gwang-il agreed that this seemed likely. After all, Juyak had been completely unequipped when they visited his home to verify his awakening. Director Park realized how foolish he had been to criticize Juhyok without knowing the truth. He ordered that when Juhyok arrived, he should be allowed to buy any item he wanted at a giveaway price. He regretted his judgment from 15 days ago. Meanwhile, John turned pale and started sweating heavily after hearing Juhyok's request. Juhyok wanted John to stab him with his dagger. John felt like he was being tortured. He told Juhyok that if he was unhappy, he should just beat him to death instead. Juhyok explained that he only wanted to test whether the energy shield worked properly. It wasn't like he asked John to kill him. He couldn't understand why John was making such a big deal over a small poke. John pretended not to hear him, and Juhyok grew frustrated, so our MC did it himself. He grabbed John's arm and pointed the dagger at his own body. John was stunned. Juhyok started bleeding. He panicked when he realized he hadn't activated the shield. John immediately panicked too, and insisted they cut off his cursed arm. Fortunately, the healing effect kicked in. John begged him never to do something like that again. Juhyok agreed and told John to go finish his hunt. In the blink of an eye, John dashed off and slashed the creatures climbing the tall trees. Juhyok estimated that the hunt would be finished in at most 10 minutes, so he decided to practice his skills while waiting. He used Shadow Step and was speechless. He moved so fast that an afterimage was left behind. He was shocked by his speed. Now he finally understood how it felt. It also made sense why John wanted him to learn this skill first. He could move freely with it. It would be perfect for running away. Suddenly, something caught his attention. It was a goblin. It was trying to crawl away. He realized it had been hiding to avoid John, but now, it suddenly charged at him. He activated his shield right away. Luckily, it turned on in time and stopped his arm from being bitten off. Creeped out, he kicked the goblin away. It flew straight toward John. John slashed it to death, thanks to the perfect pass. He was about to tease Juhyok about playing soccer, but then he froze. He realized Juhyok had been in danger and rushed over. He asked if Juhyok was okay. He checked his body while firing off questions, whether he fought the goblin, and if he was hurt anywhere. After inspecting him and even sniffing his armpits, he realized Juhyok was strangely fine. He scolded Juhyok for being reckless, reminding him again that he shouldn't act so boldly. Juhyok's ears rang from the lecture, so he simply said he would be more careful. After farming the 15th floor for 15 days, he had grown more comfortable using his skills. The magic stones he collected weighed a total of 22.5 kilograms and were worth about 11,250,000 won. Gwang-il returned his call, and Juhyok asked to visit the player shop. Gwang-il said they would send an escort to his home immediately. Juhyok said he could go by himself, but Gwang-il insisted it was a standard benefit for all contracted players. With that settled, Juhyok could only wait. A luxury car picked him up and drove him there. When he stepped out, Gwang-il greeted him. He welcomed Juhyok warmly to the administration, and Juhyok could tell he was being treated like a VIP. They went inside, and Juhyok's vein data was successfully registered. From then on, he could visit and use the shop anytime without calling ahead. Gwang-il offered to give him a tour, but Juhyok declined. He wanted to take his time and look around on his own. He headed to the player shop. The facility was luxurious, yet there wasn't a single customer in sight. He wondered if the items were simply too expensive. His first task was to sell the magic stones. The total came to 11,250,000 won, which would be deposited into his account within 3 days. He asked if he could use the funds right away in the shop, and permission was granted. Feeling exhausted, he decided to buy what he needed and head home immediately. Meanwhile, Director Park asked Gwang-il if Joo-hyuk was able to shop without any problems. Gwang-il reported that Joo-hyuk was browsing and that other players had been informed the shop was closed for the day. The director then asked about the pricing. Gwang-il explained that he instructed the staff to sell everything at a 90% discount. He believed that giving items away for free might burden someone as timid as Joo-hyuk and cause him to refuse. Director Park said he handled it well. Back at home, Joo-hyuk took out his adamant mace, which cost 2 million won. He also bought a pair of basilisk leather walkers for 3 million won. He had heard that standard item prices usually start at 20 to 30 million won at minimum. Considering that team leader Gwang-il personally came to see him, he knew he had received special treatment. He complained that it felt burdensome, but at the same time, he loved the walkers, leaving him with mixed feelings. The fact that he could rely on just a pair of walkers for his entire defense was all thanks to the energy shield. It was an all-in-one armor that replaced every other defensive gear slot, and he only had it because of the perk. He had promised himself not to get greedy when he started climbing the tower, but the perk was like a devil. It was slowly making him greedy. The next day, John was summoned. He saluted and asked if they would be farming the 15th floor again. But Joo-hyuk answered that they were heading to the 16th floor. The summon cooldown had reset. They could now summon one more person. As the summoning began, Joo-hyuk prayed with all his heart. A purple light started to take shape, but they weren't ready for how large it became. Its head pierced through the roof. Joo-hyuk froze in terror. His eyes were wide and unfocused, sweat pouring down his face, his mouth hanging open as fear and shock hit him at once. In his mind, he wondered what kind of monster he had just summoned. At the same time, he mourned his security deposit. Cracks meant bye-bye money. The arms and the legs of the summoned began to appear. It was a massive man. Joo-hyuk couldn't tell whether it was human or a monster. Annoyed, John kicked him and shouted for him to sit down. His foot landed right on the man's face. While hitting the Titan, John complained that of all people, it had to be this guy. He said the man was ruining his life and that he wanted him dead. Joo-hyuk wondered if the two knew each other. The man grew irritated and said his hits didn't hurt, but rather, they tickled. John dared him to keep talking. He threatened to slit his throat and tie a pretty ribbon afterward. Joo-hyuk stepped in. One broken ceiling was already enough, he demanded. John instantly obeyed. He told John to step aside so he could talk to their new companion. John said there was no point. That guy was famous in their world, infamous even, for being a complete idiot. He mocked him, saying he probably didn't even know the 3 laws. The man argued that he had memorized them well, so John told him to recite them. The man said Article 1 was absolute obedience to the summoner. Article 2 was about prioritizing understanding value. And for the last one, he couldn't remember Article 3 at all. That proved John's point. He suggested killing the man and making him unsummonable for 100 days. The poor man already looked like his head was overheating. Joo-hyuk didn't even know such a punishment existed. A screen then appeared. The man was listed as the dim-witted savage meat shield of the Great Plans tribe. His name was unknown. His grade was rare. He was a human savage warrior, summonable for 10 hours, with a cooldown of 3 hours. At the moment, he had no satisfaction rating. Joo-hyuk felt disappointed. An R rank was the lowest rank he could pull. He thought about waiting a month before trying to summon again. He then asked the man for his name, but he said he had forgotten it. When asked if he knew where he was, the man said no. He didn't know about the tower either. Our MC started to feel frustrated, so he decided to check the detailed specs instead. But suddenly, just like with John, he was pulled into the man's memories. He woke up in a vast green plain. Back then, the savage warrior was happily playing with butterflies. He was a warrior of the Great Plains tribe, with a pure soul who found true happiness simply by living in nature. But beneath that innocence, his physical strength was top tier. When giant plains wolves charged at him in anger, he thought they only wanted to play. Without meaning to, he crushed their bones. He was simply too dim-witted. A man eventually found him and confirmed that the rumors were true. He really was enormous. The man introduced himself as Arius and asked for his name, but the warrior had already forgotten it. In the end, the savage warrior was deceived by the false hero and sent into battle as a living shield against the super beast, the Hydra. With his tough body, He endured the Hydra's breath and fought back. He tore off its heads one by one, unaware that his own skin was melting away. His only thought was to protect his comrades. Eventually, the repeated acid attacks overwhelmed him, and he melted to death. His comrades surrounded him, mocking him until the end. Now Juhyuk understood why he was called a meat shield. Tears fell as he realized how cruel it all was. He didn't care if the man was a little stupid. Juhyuk reached out his hand and welcomed him. He invited him to climb the tower together. The man reached out as well, but his hand was too large. Juhyuk could only shake one of his fingers. He then tried to give him a name, suggesting Yaman or Gobang. The man said he didn't know which to choose, so Juhyuk told him to pick one himself. The giant chose Gobang. Juhyuk promised Gobang that he would make him happy. He asked if Gobang trusted him. Gobang said he did, and that he would follow whatever Juhyuk told him to do. Our MC then told John that the three of them were comrades now, and they had to make it work. John looked extremely unhappy. But deep down, John had already come up with a sinister plan. He told Juhyuk that Gobang would make a reliable meat shield, and that he would train him and turn him into a proper fighter. With that settled, Juhyuk told them they would climb the 16th floor together. Gobang replied loudly, "Yes, sir!" John then stomped on Gobang's foot for answering late. Gobang quickly copied John's tone, which only annoyed him even more. Now the party consisted of a timid, average player, a deranged assassin, and a very dim-witted meat shield. On paper, it sounded like a disaster waiting to happen. They entered the Korea Black Tower 16th floor. Their physical stats were adjusted to match their current level, and traits and combat skills became available. Juhyuk hoped to make the best of it. The mission on the 16th floor was to eliminate 30 goblin scouts within 5 hours. John told Juhyuk to activate his energy shield and warned him to be ready to use Shadow Step at a moment's notice. Those goblins fired poison needles, and there was no way to tell when an ambush would happen. A goblin targeted Juhyuk. It fired a poison needle, but John caught it before it could hit him. They were under ambush. Juhyuk dodged and hid behind a rock while John blocked the incoming needles. So many needles were fired that the rock Juhyuk was hiding behind began to crack. By his estimate, there were more than 50 goblins. He ordered Gobang to move to the front and block them. Gobang became serious. His footsteps shook the ground. He leapt high into the air. John was confused when the goblins suddenly started running. A massive shadow towered over him, forcing him to look up. When Gobang slammed into the ground, the impact exploded outward, catching many goblins in the blast. Even John was thrown back. Juhyuk saw it and thought that with that kind of weight and power, it wasn't even a fight. The remaining goblins fired more poison needles, but they only tickled Gobang. Following orders, he wiped them out. Juhyuk couldn't believe Gobang was only ranked R. Based on combat ability alone, he looked closer to an SSR. Juhyuk realized the low rank was probably due to his lack of intelligence. Afterward, they went home and ate fried chicken. Gobang loved it. Juhyuk praised his performance and told him to eat as much as he wanted. John smacked him and told him to eat one piece at a time. Juhyuk wondered if there was no get-along option between them. When John took a bite, his mouth burst into flames. He hadn't expected the chicken to be that spicy. Juhyuk teased him, saying an assassin being weak to spice was pathetic. Gobang suddenly said that the summoner was a good person. Juhyuk was completely caught off guard. The giant explained it was because Juhyuk fed him kitchen, which helped him live. Juhyuk blushed, clearly touched. He said it was nothing compared to what Gobang had done, and that he was the one relying on him. Once again, John hit Gobang and corrected him, saying it was chicken, not kitchen. Juhyuk jumped at how hard the hit was. He scolded John for bullying someone who was eating so happily. John apologized and said Gobang just needed some education. Deep down, though, he was annoyed that Gobang was inhaling the chicken while they weren't looking. The next day, they entered the Korea Black Tower, 17th floor. Their physical stats adjusted to their new level, and their traits and combat skills became available once more. Now that Juhyuk had reached level 17, he could feel his power surging. It was almost hard to control. His heart pounded, like a wild stallion inside him was waking up. He felt ready to jump into the fight. But John warned him that people usually start getting reckless around level 20, so he volunteered to take the front. Gobang also said he would protect him and told Juhyuk to stay back and stay alive. Feeling small, Juhyuk simply agreed. The mission on the 17th floor was to defeat 30 goblin warriors. Watching walkthrough videos before hadn't prepared him for this. Seeing them in person was overwhelming. The goblin battalion had at least 90 warriors, and for simple monsters, they were surprisingly skilled in strategy and tactics. The walkthrough, he studied, explained the usual approach. When the goblin warrior unit appears, retreat to the safe zone first. Wait until the group splits into patrols of 3. To avoid drawing attention, lure and eliminate them 3 at a time. repeating the process until the mission is complete. This method takes a long time, but Ju-hyuk didn't need to follow such a slow plan. He called out to Go-bang and told him to move. Go-bang let out a loud roar as power surged through his body. With Go-bang on the team, Ju-hyuk felt confident that even the 20th floor, and possibly higher, would be easy. He ordered Go-bang to wipe them all out, and he looked forward to the perk he would earn next. After receiving the order, Go-bang charged forward. The Goblin General gave an order: be in a defensive formation. They threw spears at him, but they barely scratched Go-bang's sturdy body. He crashed into the formation, sending goblins flying. They slammed into the ground face first. Ju-hyuk was amazed by how well Go-bang performed. He knew that strategy and tactics only mattered when both sides were on similar levels, but comparing Go-bang to the goblins was like throwing thousands of rental bikes at a K2 Black Panther tank. The system then notified him. An S++ clear had been achieved on the 17th floor of Korea's Black Tower. An S++ platinum badge was awarded. Our MC was impressed. John noticed his reaction and felt both surprised and a little disappointed. They moved on to the 18th floor, where the mission was to eliminate goblin assassins. Once again, Ju-hyuk sent Go-bang charging ahead. The goblin assassins relied on stealth skills. They were completely confused when Go-bang grabbed nearby trees and caught them without even realizing it. Go-bang frowned, saying he couldn't see anything. Ju-hyuk quickly realized this floor wouldn't be as easy as he thought. Go-bang shouted at the goblins to come out. John's laughter echoed through the forest. He mocked Ju-hyuk, saying he had suffered long enough watching that clueless meat shield strategy, and now it was time to cleanse his eyes with a real one. The goblin's stealth couldn't keep up with him. He used Shadow Step. In an instant, he cut them down. The kill count kept rising. Our MC was impressed, was he? It was his plan all along, for the two to work together. John had been anxious ever since his role was reduced because of Go-bang. Stirring their competitive spirit had been intentional, and it worked perfectly. He set things up so they would push themselves and gather more badges. He needed to keep boosting his abilities through perks, and he was already close to level 18. At last, it was time. Time to let the wild stallion loose. Before entering the 18th floor, he carefully reviewed all the strategy information. The goblin assassin's stealth skill was low level. If he focused, he could sense their movements. There was nothing to fear. He had practiced Shadow Step countless times while farming the 15th floor. He slipped behind a stealth goblin assassin, but at the last moment he twisted his ankle. He lost his balance, and accidentally stabbed the goblin in the head. What a lucky bastard. That still counted toward the mission. He was relieved that it worked out just as he intended. But another goblin slipped in behind him and attacked. Meanwhile, John steadily cut down goblins, pushing the count to 25 out of 30. He decapitated the next one. Now only 3 remained. Go-bang charged in. He swung wildly in every direction. 3 goblins were caught in his attacks. He tried to help more, but John shouted at him, telling him he was only getting in the way. Then John realized that Ju-hyuk was gone. Meanwhile, Ju-hyuk activated his shield. He created some distance between himself and the goblins. A blow struck his head. It would have been fatal if not for the energy barrier. The goblins surrounded him. He took a combat stance. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Because the goblin's movement suddenly looked slow. It felt like the world itself had slowed down. He struck them down one by one. Afterward, the system notified him that he had achieved an S++ rank on the 18th floor of Korea's Black Tower. An S++ reward, a platinum badge, was granted. John immediately searched for him. When he found our MC, Ju-hyuk proudly said he might have landed the final blow. John dropped to his knees, relieved to see him unharmed. Meanwhile, back at the administration, Min-A saw the global notice announcing the S++ clear of the 18th floor. Director Park was delighted. Gwang-il commented that Ju-hyuk was unstoppable and had prepared thoroughly. If Director Park had his way, he would have announced immediately that the record holder of Korea's 18 consecutive S++ clears was right there. Gwang-il warned him not to say such things, even as a joke. Min-A added that revealing his identity would be dangerous. Director Park clarified that he was simply proud of him. Ju-hyuk had become a special player, one who needed even more careful protection than elite teams. Soon, the news reported that a new wind was sweeping through the climb of Korea's Black Tower. After a 20-day pause, an unprecedented 18 consecutive S++ clears had occurred, rewriting the history of tower climbing. The mysterious player was estimated to be at level 19. It wasn't just the players. People across the entire nation were trying to uncover the identity of the S++ player. John turned off the TV and let out a deep sigh. While Ju-hyuk felt uneasy, he told John to stop sighing and just say what was on his mind. John finally spoke. "It's too fast, sir." He meant the speed at which Ju-hyuk was realizing his talent. Juyak was confused. He didn't think he had any talent, so he assumed John wasn't talking about him at all. He brushed it off as a joke, but to John, it wasn't a joke. The shadow step Juyak used at the end was flawless, so clean that even John would struggle to copy it. That was what made it dangerous. He told Juyak he was being serious. He warned that once Juyak started enjoying combat, his confidence would grow. And as confidence grew, so would the danger. If he became brave, things would get risky. John reminded him of their promise from the beginning: safety first, survival above all else. Juyak agreed. He said he wouldn't do anything reckless and would only focus on one enemy at a time. John accepted that. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Deep down, he felt certain that one day their summoner would cause a serious accident. Gobang mocked him for crying and looking pathetic. John snapped, kicked him in the face, and warned that he would boil him alive in a pot. Gobang slammed into the fridge, and everything inside spilled out. That made Juyak cry. He shouted at them to stop wrecking the house and go back. He forced them to return. He felt miserable seeing the kimchi his mom gave him spilled all over the floor. To clear his head, he decided to visit his parents the next day. The next morning. He opened the door and announced that their son was home. His mother heard him and told him to come inside. His father smiled and said that since he lived nearby, he should visit more often. His wife scolded him for nagging when Juyak was already busy. Juyak asked his father how his hip was doing. His father tried to stand up, but Juyak told him to stay lying down. His father replied that he spent half the day in bed anyway, so standing for a bit was fine. His mother told them to sit at the table because she had made stew. His father asked where their brat was, and his mother said Minyak went out to buy tofu and would be back soon. The food was served. While eating, Juyak asked if things were hard at home. His mother told him not to worry and said she would find another job soon. His father told him not to think about them and to focus on his own life. They also told him not to send them money. Juyak tested the mood and said it would be nice if he awakened at a time like this. His father suddenly tapped the table, making Juyak flinch. For a moment, he wondered if he had been too obvious, but his father just laughed and asked if that was supposed to be a joke. He said he couldn't imagine his son awakening when he was his spitting image, someone who, despite being a grown man, begged his mother to deal with cockroaches. Minyak added that it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. His mother told him it wasn't something to brag about. Then she asked if Juyak wasn't going to work. He lied and said it was his day off, even though he had quit a long time ago. His mother noticed his lying face and grew suspicious, but he kept playing dumb. She told him she trusted him. But she also warned him never to borrow money from loan sharks. That made him remember something he had pushed aside: the Smile Cash murder case. He quickly told her it would never happen, then asked what happened to her job. She said it was because of a nightmare customer. While servicing a water purifier, the customer demanded she clean all their recycling and food waste too. She didn't care about ratings anymore and snapped back. She got fired because of it. His mother was reckless but brave. She was the kind of person who couldn't tolerate injustice. That was why his father fell completely for her. He proudly said his greatest achievement in life was asking her out. And of course, he was a true beta male. Juyak was beta male junior, and Minyak was beta male junior too. It perfectly showed how weak but stubborn their family genes were. That was why they would worry if he entered the tower. So he decided to tell them about his awakening later, after things settled down. A while later, he left the building with his little brother and handed him some cash. Of course, Minyak asked what it was for. Juyak told him it was an allowance for their parents. He asked him to give it to them and keep an eye on them so they wouldn't overwork themselves. He was about to leave when Minyak told him to wait. Minyak hesitated, and Juyak thought he was worried about the tuition Juyak had paid for him last time. He figured the little punk was too embarrassed to say, "Thank you," out loud. So he placed a hand on his shoulder and told him he understood how he felt. Minyak looked relieved. Now he could finally say what was on his mind. He said that the allowance was only for mom and dad, which made it feel incomplete. Then, he pointed out that Juhyok had forgotten his share. Deep inside, Juhyok felt annoyed at this little shit. He transferred 500,000 won to him and told him not to waste it. At the Hanam Dong Soul Awakener Management Administration, Juhyok stood at the entrance. He had planned to go back to his rented room, but on a whim, he ended up there instead. After seeing his family, his resolve to do things properly had only grown stronger. Gwangil once told him to give a heads up if he ever decided to drop by. But since he was already here, Juhyok figured it was fine if Gwangil didn't know. It would only make things awkward if he came out to welcome him again. He did have an energy shield, but as the monsters grew stronger with each floor, he would need a real shield. The clerk told him the price was 100 million won. He was stunned. He said it looked heavy and expensive, and if that was the only option, then it couldn't be helped that he couldn't buy it. Inside, he was shocked by the insane price. To make it worse, the clerk was a woman, which made him stutter. He also noticed that the place was crowded today, even though it had been completely empty last time. The woman then offered him a round buckler made from an alloy of adamant and sectonium. Because it was small, it was lightweight. Even with the lower price, it had a self-repair function. She suggested he try it on. He did, and he liked how well it matched his mace. It looked like they were made as a set. He liked it so much that he asked for the price. She told him it was 40 million won and offered to help him with the payment. The payment went through. He finally bought it. Still, he felt that talking to the clerk was harder than fighting goblins. He thought about heading home. But then a man spoke to him, noticing that he hadn't been awakened for long. The man introduced himself as Choi Hoseok, a player as well. Juhyuk felt he was a bit too forward, but he introduced himself back. Hoseok said he came to the shop every day, and since it was his first time seeing Juhyuk, he wanted to get acquainted. He asked what floor Juhyuk was on. Hoseok said he was currently climbing the floors in the 30s. Juhyuk answered that he was still in the teens. Hoseok immediately realized his level was low. He brightened up and told Juhyuk that if he ever ran into trouble with clearing floors, he could ask him anything. Juhyuk realized that Hoseok was genuinely friendly and kind. He felt like the type who was naturally extroverted. He replied that he hadn't had any trouble yet. Hoseok encouraged him to ask for help anytime and said he was often around. Then Hoseok said goodbye. Juhyuk was impressed by his fearless social skills. It also made him think that Hoseok probably had a girlfriend. He felt a little envious that night. Juhyuk checked his stats and saw that he was already level 19. That meant he could now challenge the 19th floor. But before doing that, he planned to summon John and talk things through. John appeared and thanked him for the star rating. Juhyuk happily showed him his new shield. When John saw that he had even gone as far as buying a shield, he started crying. He asked if Juhyuk really had to go that far. Juhyuk could only say that he would be as careful as possible. John replied that his previous summoner had said the same thing. Juhyuk added that he was a total beta male, so he would give up the moment things got tough. John made him promise not to charge in recklessly, and if things became dangerous, he had to sacrifice them and escape. Juhyuk promised. John then added that if it came to that, it would be better to sacrifice Gobang instead of him. John was ready to clear, but then he smelled something. Juhyuk told him that he bought king-sized dumplings for him. John was delighted that Juhyuk looked after him before that oaf Gobang. He was about to take a bite when he sensed something strange. While Juhyuk was enjoying his food, John asked if there was anyone he held a grudge against. Juhyuk answered no with his mouth full, but John told him that someone outside was overflowing with killing intent. Juhyuk turned pale. Then he heard knocking on the door, followed by a voice asking if anyone was inside. He told John to hide for now and activated his energy shield. The door burst open. Juhyuk braced himself. The man used a gun to destroy the lock. He peeked inside and casually greeted Juhyuk. Juhyuk's eyes widened. It was the man he had seen at the player shop. Hoseok said that tailing him had been a real pain. Juhyuk asked why, but Hoseok told him to shut up and put his weapon away. Hoseok shouted at him and threatened to kill him. He demanded that Juhyuk hand over his bracelet and inventory, or he would turn his head into a honeycomb. The gun was pressed against his forehead. Juhyuk felt his heart sink, because this was basically suicide. Slowly, John appeared behind Hoseok. This fucker chose the wrong person to rob. Hoseok told him that he wasn't joking. Inside, he felt pleased. Juhyuk was frozen in fear just from having a gun pointed at him. He was glad he had picked the perfect prey this time. From experience, losers like this always gave up their inventory after one good hit. He told Juhyuk to hurry up before he beat him to death. But John struck first. He smashed the back of his dagger into Hoseok's head. Hoseok was shocked. He hadn't expected another person to be inside the house. Even after being hit, he tried to stand. But his legs gave out, and he collapsed face first onto the floor. Juhyuk stood there, stunned. Then he praised John for doing well. He felt relieved that John only knocked him out instead of killing him. And here he was, worried that John might go on a killing spree without reading the situation, like some brainless thug. Juhyuk suspected the man was an item broker. Item brokers were people who murdered players, who were no different from civilians outside the tower, just to steal their gear. He had heard rumors about them before. Gwangil once told him that one perk of being on an elite team was personal protection outside the tower. Outside, players were just as fragile as ordinary people. If he hadn't awakened the ability to summon outside the tower, he would be dead for sure. Once again, he realized how broken his ability truly was. John started tying a ribbon around Hoseok. He said he would dispose of the trash outside, but Juhyok stopped him and said he would call the police. John insisted there was no need and said he could just take him away and dump him somewhere. Juhyok argued that calling the cops was the easiest solution. Director Park was shocked when he heard that Juhyok had stopped by the shop again. Gwang-il replied that it happened when he wasn't looking. Director Park asked what Juhyok bought and was told that he purchased a single small round buckler. Director Park said that if only Juhyok would sign the contract, they could have equipped him with top-tier gear from head to toe. He asked if they had identified Juhyok's traits yet. Gwang-il answered that since Juhyok bought a mace and a shield, they suspected he was a melee class. In their minds, they pictured him as a confident knight with a mace and shield. Director Park disagreed. If Juhyok was a close combat fighter, even a full set of protective gear wouldn't be enough to keep him safe. Gwang-il replied that he would think of an excuse to give Juhyok a full set of armor. Just then, his phone rang. He was surprised to see that the call was from the police. He apologized to the director and said he needed to take it. He answered and froze at what he heard. He immediately rushed out and drove as fast as he could. He ran up the staircase, taking the steps 2 at a time. He regretted not securing the elite contract from the very beginning. His chest tightened as he worried something had happened to Juhyok. Meanwhile, in Juhyok's room, the police arrested Hoseok for home invasion and aggravated robbery. Hoseok screamed in pain. He tried to frame Juhyok, shouting that he had been kidnapped and that he was the real victim. Juhyok panicked and yelled that Hoseok was the one who broke in. Still, the officers insisted on bringing the homeowner to the station as well. Juhyok grew nervous. For a moment, he truly thought he might go to jail. That was when Gwang-il burst in. Juhyok had already gone pale, imagining life in prison. Hoseok, on the other hand, felt relieved when he saw Gwang-il. He thought he had finally been saved. He immediately told Gwang-il that Juhyok tried to kidnap him and steal his items. What he didn't expect was Gwang-il slapping him across the face. Hoseok was stunned. Gwang-il was furious at this bastard for lying straight to his face and for daring to try to kill a fellow player. Hoseok kept insisting that he was the victim. Gwang-il coldly declared that his player registration was revoked, then struck him again. Hoseok couldn't believe it. No one was listening to him. Gwang-il ordered the police to drag him away and said the NIS would arrive shortly to take custody of him. The NIS handled crimes involving players, and they were known to use torture. Hoseok finally broke. He admitted that he was blinded by greed and begged them to spare his life. Gwang-il knew it was all bullshit. This wasn't the first piece of trash he had seen. He suspected Hoseok was a repeat offender, and soon every crime he committed would come to light. He suggested that Hoseok find himself a lawyer, though he doubted anyone would take the case. Then Gwang-il confirmed arrest procedures with the officers. He told them that if Hoseok tried to escape into the tower during transport, they could simply wait. He would reappear in the same spot eventually. Hoseok begged and cried, but he was dragged away. Gwang-il turned to Juhyok, his expression terrifying, and asked if he was injured. Juhyok answered that he was just a little shaken. Gwang-il called his name. Then he bowed deeply and apologized. He promised that they would take full measures to make sure something like this never happened again. Deep inside, he knew he could no longer delay the elite contract. It wasn't about benefits anymore. It was to protect Juhyok. The next day, John asked Juhyok if everything went well yesterday. Juhyok told him that, thanks to him, the police arrested the guy. John asked if the man would be executed, and Juhyok answered no. John casually held his dagger behind his back as he asked where the detention center was. Juhyok said he had no idea and warned him not to even think about trying to find out. Juhyok summoned Gobang. Gobang was thrilled to receive 5 stars. He was overjoyed, saying he had never seen that many stars before. Juhyok also learned that Gobang could actually count. They entered the 19th floor of the Korea Black Tower. The mission was to defeat 30 goblin shamans. The 19th floor was filled with goblin shamans, but honestly, they weren't very threatening. They couldn't use strong attack magic. At most, they relied on curses, binding spells, and summoning a few weak minions. The curses could be annoying, but nothing more. Even so, Juhyok had nothing to worry about. Gobang charged straight at the goblin shamans. The shamans fired black magic curses toward them. Gobang took a deep breath. Then he let out a thunderous scream. Ju-hyuk was shocked. The curses were blown away by sheer sound alone. It was an incredibly brutish method. John slipped around from behind. He reminded Gobang that they needed to clear the floor as fast as possible. Gobang replied that he remembered his task, to wipe them all out. They rushed the enemies. John cut them down. At the same time, Gobang smashed the rest with his fists. Ju-hyuk felt his blood boil and wanted to jump in. But before he could move, the system notified him that the 19th floor had already been cleared. He saw John and Gobang whispering to each other. Then John turned to him and said it was refreshing. That was when Ju-hyuk realized the truth. They finished it early on purpose, so he wouldn't get a chance to fight. He had been played. The system announced that he achieved an S++ clear rank on the 19th floor of the Korea Black Tower. As an S+ clear reward, he received a platinum badge. The next day, he entered the 20th floor of the Korea Black Tower. It was the monumental 20th floor, often called the talent discernment test, and it was infamous for its extreme difficulty. John warned them that the place was extremely dangerous. Every kind of goblin imaginable would be there: scouts with poison darts, warriors with perfect tactics, assassins that appeared out of thin air, shamans casting curses, and massive hobgoblins. He said it plainly. This floor was terrifying. He added that if it were him, he would just wait somewhere safe. Then he elbowed Gobang, signaling him to speak. Gobang puffed out his chest and told Ju-hyuk that he didn't need to lift a finger. He would kill them all by himself. The mission on the 20th floor was to defeat 100 goblins of any type and 1 hobgoblin within 10 hours. Failing the condition would result in death or mission forfeit. Ju-hyuk realized they were planning to block his path again and leave him out of the fight. John told Gobang to draw all the aggro while he moved in once the enemies were distracted. Gobang charged forward. Different types of goblins unleashed their skills at once. Ju-hyuk refused to stand there and accept John's treatment. John was caught off guard. Ju-hyuk sprinted after Gobang. He even stepped on Gobang's back to launch himself forward. He charged straight through the attacks and felt glad he did. John saw him and screamed, "No!" Just a little flashback. Ju-hyuk had been an introvert ever since he was a kid. When he was young, he was playing with a toy car. Another kid snatched it from him. He couldn't say a word. Things got worse in elementary school. Poverty became the problem. By middle school, he was still a loner. His classmates fooled around together while he sat alone. In high school, he even ate lunch by himself. He lived like a complete outcast. He was too afraid to try and change anything. He never would have imagined himself fighting monsters in a tower. He was the kind of guy who couldn't even look a bully in the eye. But monsters weren't people. He didn't have to deal with fear, judgment, or human interaction. They were no different from quest mobs in a video game, so he focused on one thing: wiping them out and getting the reward. John was screaming at him to stop. Goblins with spears rushed toward him, but Ju-hyuk kept moving. He slipped past them and got behind one goblin. He smashed its face with his shield. He leapt from one goblin to another, striking with everything he had. John was stunned. He couldn't believe that in such a short time, Ju-hyuk was already using Shadow Walk this well. Then several short, powerful beams slammed into Ju-hyuk's back. John screamed for him to watch out. Ju-hyuk raised his shield on instinct. If not for the energy shield, he would have been turned into a pincushion. Only then did he realize how terrifying it really was. He regretted acting tough. John shouted for him to keep running toward the cliff. Gobang moved without hesitation, determined to protect him. Several goblins chased after Ju-hyuk. He could feel his stamina draining fast. He reached a dead end. He wondered if this was the place. Panic set in. There was nothing there. He didn't know what to do. The goblins were closing in. He thought he was going to die. Then Gobang stepped in front of him and raised his arm like a shield. He towered over the trembling goblins and crushed them to death. John ran forward, beheading goblins as he went. He praised Gobang for a job well done. The shaman goblins rushed to cast their spells, but John was faster. He beheaded the shamans right on the cliff. He looked around, checking if that was all of them. He had already killed over 100 goblins, so he expected something stronger to appear. Ju-hyuk was amazed that they wiped them out in an instant. Ju-hyuk looked extremely uncomfortable. He was sweating and trembling, forcing a strained smile as he awkwardly asked Gobang to move a little forward, clearly overwhelmed by how close Gobang's butt was to his face. Suddenly, they heard a loud crash. A tall idol appeared, short-legged and sorrowful. It was the final evolution in the goblin evolution tree. A hobgoblin. John jumped down from the cliff. He called out to Gobang. Gobang instantly understood and charged straight at the hobgoblin to block it. He caught its swords and pushed back using his own blade. Then he grabbed the creature by the neck. John was pleased. It looked like Gobang was finally earning his keep. He told him to hold it tight. As John landed, he stabbed the hobgoblin straight through both eyes. With that, they completed the mission. 100 over 100 goblins defeated and 1 over 1 hobgoblin slain. The 20th floor mission was successfully cleared. Our boy leveled up and received rewards, 2 kilograms of magic stone and 5 tower-exclusive healing potions. John grinned and praised Juyak for his hard work. Juyak was still in shock that the boss mob had been killed so easily. It made him realize it really was better to leave everything to those two. He bowed deeply and thanked them for protecting him, acknowledging how hard they fought. The two returned the bow. The system announced that Juyak achieved an S++ clear rating for the 20th floor of the Korea Black Tower. The S++ clear reward was a platinum badge. With this, Juyak was now qualified to challenge the 21st floor. Meanwhile, news spread about the S++ clear on the 20th floor of the Korea Black Tower. The comment section exploded. One person said they thought it was over since no updates had appeared for 2 weeks. Another wondered how far they would go. Someone replied that the highest possible floor was the 30th. Others assumed the group belonged to an elite guild. One final comment claimed they were staying hidden out of fear that another country might try to poach them. Juhyok had set a new record by clearing 20 consecutive floors. It was an incredible achievement, but he knew it would also become a headache if it drew too much attention. Min A suggested they find a way to control the press. Director Park immediately rejected the idea, warning that any confirmation of the S++ record holder's identity could be leaked. He then asked if they had investigated Juhyok's family situation. Gwang-il replied that everything had been handled with the utmost discretion. He reported that Juhyok's father was Bong-soo Cheol. After suffering an accident on an icy road and undergoing hip surgery a few months ago, he was currently in rehabilitation. Director Park asked how they planned to provide support. Gwang-il answered that they intended to refer him to the best rehabilitation center in the country. Director Park approved the plan. Gwang-il moved on to Juhyok's younger brother, Bong Min-hyuk. He was a college freshman and was scheduled for military enlistment soon. Director Park ordered them to assist with both the enlistment process and scholarship support. And finally, Juhyok's mother, Hong Gum-ja. She was working as a water purifier coordinator, but is currently unemployed. It seems she was forcibly fired from the company after a conflict with an abusive customer. Lowering his voice, Gwang-il said that Geum-ja was the one they needed to be most careful with. She had the strongest influence in the family. With her fierce personality, he had heard that neither her husband nor her sons dared to defy her. After hearing this, Director Park believed their plan would succeed. He ordered them to proceed and to use the full authority of the Awakener Management Administration to ensure success. Gwang-il confirmed that support for Juhyok's family would begin immediately. Meanwhile, John's nose twitched as soon as he smelled the food delivery. Gobang squirmed in excitement. Juhyok shouted at them to stay still. He then ordered them to hide for a moment so they wouldn't be seen. He threw a blanket over Gobang. The delivery guy handed over 12 orders of sweet and sour pork and 12 bowls of jjajangmyeon. He joked and asked if Juhyok was throwing a party. Juhyok replied that it was something like that. The man laughed and said he added an order of fried dumplings on the house. He told Juhyok to enjoy the meal and to order from them again. Deep inside, Juhyok thought the guy was stingy for giving only 1 order of dumplings despite such a huge order. He checked the bags, but there wasn't even a coupon. Still, he understood. It was hard to imagine people ordering food using coupons anyway. He told them they could come out now. John loved the rich smell of the jjajangmyeon. Gobang was drooling. Juhyok knew he had never tasted anything like this before. Gobang stuffed 1 dumpling into his mouth and said it was crunchy. John's jaw dropped when he saw Gobang eat the plate too. Juhyok told them to eat first while he checked something. He opened his inventory. He had unlocked a special perk for collecting 20 platinum badges. Curious, he wondered what the perk would be this time. The system notified him that he had received 1 random box. His eyes widened as his curiosity grew even stronger. A random box contained 3 random items obtainable from the tower. The item pool included magic stones, over 10 types of tower native herbs, 3 types of tower metals, more than 50 types of tower monster leathers, potions, elixirs, weapons, armor, accessories, combat skills, level up runes, max 5 levels, tower jumping tickets, max 5 levels and 5 floors, skill cooldown reset tickets, trait enhancement runes, summoned entity rank up runes, multinational tower access tickets, and guaranteed rank summon tickets that could be SR, SSR, or even LSSR. Juhyok whined that the list was way too long. He didn't even know what half of the items were. Since it was random anyway, he decided to just skim through it. He reasoned that magic stones, herbs, and metals weren't great. Weapons and armor were average as well. A level-up rune would raise his level, but force him to stay on the same floor. A tower jumping ticket would let him skip floors and level up, but then he realized that meant missing out on rewards. That made the level-up rune much better in comparison. The multinational tower access ticket caught his attention since it sounded like it would let him enter towers in other countries. But the real jackpot was the guaranteed rank summon ticket, especially if it turned out to be an LSSR. If he pulled a guaranteed LSSR, he could dump all the clearing work onto that summon and coast his way up the tower. He even imagined himself riding in a carriage being carried along while he relaxed. He felt hopeful, especially since he would be getting 3 items. He opened the box, praying for something good. If he did, he swore he would live a virtuous life. The box spun. His hope rose. Then his inventory displayed 10 kilograms of magic stones. He felt disappointed at the complete dud since he could obtain magic stones anytime. Still, if he sold them, it was basically a free 5 million won. He opened the second item. He received a primordial thunderclap staff, which was immediately registered in his status window. The name sounded like it came straight out of a martial arts novel, so he wondered if it was an attack skill. He decided to check the details later. Then he opened the last item. It was a summoned entity rank-up rune. This time, he was genuinely happy. He had hit the jackpot. The rune could increase a summoned entity's rank. It was one of the items he wanted the most. The problem was that he didn't know who to use it on. John was SR rank, while Gobang was R rank. In his head, they were both complete idiots, but he quickly corrected himself, calling them reliable allies instead, which somehow made the decision even harder. He considered giving it to John since they had shared so many meals together. Though, to be fair, Gobang had technically eaten more of those meals. A summoned entity rank-up rune increases a summoned entity's rank, with the scale of the increase determined by the entity's potential. During the rank-up process, the entity cannot be summoned. Since they weren't short on firepower, he decided to summon John later and use the rune on him. For now, he chose to test the skill first. The skill was called Primordial Thunderclap Staff. It imbued a weapon with the power of thunder and consisted of 3 total forms. It was a growth-type skill, which made it perfect since he needed a proper attack skill. He decided to learn it. The first form, Soul-Chasing Thunderbolt, was unlocked. He felt the technique download directly into his brain. He decided to try it out and swung his mace, attempting to unleash a soul-chasing thunderbolt. Nothing happened. An awkward silence followed. He already knew it wouldn't work. If people could use powers like that in the real world, society would have collapsed long ago, especially because of guys like Hoseok. He decided to test it properly, inside the tower, later. John asked why he suddenly started swinging his mace around. Juhyok explained that he had just gained a new skill from his perk rewards. That made John ask if it was an attack skill. Juhyok nodded and happily added that it was a growth-type skill. It made John cry out and drop his bowl. Gobang picked it up from the floor and ate it. Of course, that made John furious. He argued with Gobang since it was the last bowl and told him to spit it out. Amid the chaos, Juhyok released the summons. The next day, Juhyok sat in thought. He knew exactly what John was worried about. The summoning trait he awakened meant that the summon accounted for most of the player's combat power. In other words, a summoner didn't need to fight on the front lines, especially an irregular like him who could even manifest summons in the real world. That person from some parallel universe, the summoner who had contracted John before him, at the very least, Juhyok knew that person had been far stronger than he was. And yet, he still died. And his world was destroyed along with him. Juhyok understood why John was so paranoid about his safety, but he was a man too. He had awakened, tasted a bit of that alpha male life, and wanted to at least test the attack skill he learned. They were bound by absolute obedience anyway, so he believed he could persuade them. He summoned both of them. They appeared. John looked pale and gloomy. Juhyok wondered how someone could look that worried in just one day. John admitted that he was afraid the attack skill might end up being poison. He confessed that he had been anxious even back on the 20th floor. It had only felt safe then because they were fighting goblins. That confirmed Juhyok's suspicion. John really was worried about the attack skill. John flatly stated that orcs were out of the question. Juhyok apologized in advance, saying he was about to commit a serious offense. He asked if John planned to tie him up with some kind of butterfly knot. John replied, no. But he declared that the third law of summons was now in effect. The 3 laws of summoned entities were simple. First, a summoned entity must protect the summoner's life above all else. Second, a summoned entity must obey the summoner's commands absolutely. If there was a conflict between the first and second laws, the first law took priority. Gobang immediately grabbed Juhyok with both hands. John smacked Gobang on the head, reminding him that the order was to grab Juhyok only after they entered the tower. Their plan was simple. Once inside the tower, Gobang would restrain Juhyok while John handled all the clearing himself. Juhyok finally realized they had conspired against him. He really didn't want to go that far, but he unleashed his ultimate move, the puppy dog eyes. He begged John to let him off this time and promised to be careful. John replied that he couldn't trust him. Juhai swore he wouldn't run off on his own again. John asked if he was sure. Juhai said there was no point in just standing around. He begged them to let him get just one kill. He promised to take it slow and be careful. John grumbled. Juhyok refused to back down. Since he was so insistent, John finally agreed, but on one condition. The moment he sensed danger, he would intervene immediately. Juhyok agreed without hesitation. After that, they entered the 21st floor of the Korea Black Tower. As they walked through the forest, John explained that orcs were strong but stupid. Still, they were probably smarter than Gobang. Gobang immediately argued that he was smarter than an orc. John told him to shut up. Juhyok suddenly stopped and said they should practice 10 times before moving on. John encouraged him, saying he should practice even more than that. John made Gobang sit down and told Juhyok that Gobang would be his dummy. Juhyok was free to hit him as practice. Juhyok felt deeply uncomfortable with the idea. John insisted that Juhyok hit Gobang 10 times. He said that even at full power, Gobang wouldn't get a scratch, making him perfect for practice. Gobang added that it was fine and that it wouldn't hurt. Juhyok refused and threatened that if they kept pushing, he would just charge in alone. Besides, the instructions were already etched into his head. He believed it would be easier to practice on an orc than to hit Gobang. He urged them to move forward. John could only cry in despair. The 21st floor mission was to defeat 30 forest orcs within 4 hours. The orcs soon approached them. John charged in first. Gobang shouted that he was going too. Gobang closed the distance in a single leap. The moment he landed, he started punching the orc. At the same time, John beheaded and slashed through the other orcs in his path. Juhyok was stunned by how fast they were. He panicked. At this rate, the fight would end before he could even get a single kill. One orc froze in confusion when John ran straight past it. Juhyok realized John had deliberately left that one for him. He sprinted toward it. John called out that he would be watching from the back. The orc noticed Juhyok. It swung its blade, but Juhyok ducked under the attack. Then he jumped. The first form of soul-chasing thunderbolt was a simple vertical strike. Golden light crackled around his mace as he activated primordial thunderclap staff. He brought it down on the orc's head, and the mace pierced straight through. The monster was far weaker than he expected. Juhyok felt a surge of joy at his first victory. It collapsed to the ground. Juhyok stood beside it. He couldn't believe how easy it was. Filled with excitement, he charged toward the next one. But to his surprise, Gobang stomped on his target. John and Gobang both glared at him. Juhyok played dumb, saying that they were supposed to stop after one. With that, he cleared the 21st floor mission and leveled up. He received 2.1 kilograms of magic stones as a reward, along with 5 tower-exclusive healing potions. On top of that, he set a new record by achieving an S++ clear rank on the 21st floor of the Korea Black Tower and earned another platinum badge. The next day, he entered the tower again and was allowed to hit a single desert orc. He achieved an S++ clear rank on the 22nd floor of the Korea Black Tower. The day after that, Juhyok struck down one cave orc and, as usual, achieved an S++ clear rank on the 23rd floor of the Korea Black Tower. Even the volcano orc was a bit tricky, but he still managed to land the final blow. He conquered the tower 1 floor per day, and with John and Gobang by his side, everything went smoothly. He earned an S++ clear rank on the 24th floor of the Korea Black Tower. Another day passed. It was finally time for the long-awaited 25th floor. Taking down one enemy at a time barely scratched the surface, but for now, he needed to build credibility. Since John and Gobang were always together, he hadn't found a chance to hand over the item. He decided to use this moment to give John the rune. He summoned him. John was caught off guard since Juhyok had said they were taking the day off. Juhyok tossed him the stone, casually saying he had picked it up on the way. John asked if it was something he was supposed to eat. Juhyok told him to check it first. The moment John recognized it, he froze. It was a summoned entity rank-up rune, an item that could raise a summoned entity's rank. He could hardly believe it. Joo-hyuk asked if he liked it. John asked if Joo-hyuk was really giving it to him. If he ranked up, he would reach SSR. The thought alone left him deeply moved. Now, he would be able to protect Joo-hyuk even better. The joy on his face was impossible to hide. Seeing that smile made Joo-hyuk feel good too. Joo-hyuk asked if he wanted to start the process right away. John said he wanted to, but rushing it would be dangerous. Joo-hyuk realized this wasn't something that could be done lightly. John decided to head back for the day and perform the ritual properly. He promised to return in his new form. Joo-hyuk wasn't used to him leaving so soon and told him he was welcome to stay and hang out. John chose to stay and watch some TV. He asked which channel the rerun was on, but Joo-hyuk suggested watching it on VOD instead. John couldn't understand why he was so focused on saving money. As John flipped through the channels, something caught Joo-hyuk's eye. He suddenly told John to stop. John asked what was wrong. Joo-hyuk told him to go back to that channel. He told him to keep rewinding until he said stop, until his mom appeared on the screen. Joo-hyuk froze. Why was his mom on the news? She stood in front of a tall building holding a large sign that read, "Oppose unfair contract termination. Improve treatment for water purifier managers. Stop corporate tyranny." Deep down, she couldn't accept the unfair termination. A customer had asked her to sort and take out recycling while she was there to service a water purifier. It made no sense for that to be her responsibility. Yet the company demanded that she apologize to the customer. She refused because she had done nothing wrong. When she wouldn't bow her head, the only response she received was a notice of contract termination. For more than 10 days, she protested alone. All she gained was mockery from company executives. They thought she was wasting her time copying things she had seen on TV. If they laughed at her again, she felt like she might charge straight at them. She was boiling with anger when a man approached her. She assumed he was just another person coming to spout nonsense. Instead, the man smiled and said he could see that she had been through a lot. He introduced himself as Chang Seok, an attorney from the law firm Park and Kim. The moment he mentioned a law firm, he caught her attention. Her first reaction was anger mixed with caution. She thought the company had sent a lawyer to threaten her. She told him to go ahead and sue. She wasn't backing down. The attorney calmly asked her to relax. He explained that he was there for the exact opposite reason. He suggested filing a formal lawsuit against Jinspiring Water Corporation and handed her his business card. Park and Kim was one of the top law firms in the Republic of Korea, and they wanted to represent her free of charge. He explained that he knew she had filed a petition with the labor office. He had come after hearing her story through someone he knew. He assured her that he wasn't a scammer. She still looked doubtful. He added that this was part of an annual project the firm ran to help socially vulnerable individuals. She found him suspicious, but she didn't think he was lying. Still, she wasn't sure what to do. The lawyer told her to think of it as a small blessing after all the hardship she had endured. He said the firm would stake its honor on winning her case. Since he had come this far, she felt it was all or nothing. She decided to let him handle her case. The lawyer looked impressed by how decisive she was. He suggested starting by taking the issue to the press. Almost instantly, reporters swarmed around her. He told her that when answering questions, she didn't need to worry about time. She should speak in detail and leave out nothing. Every instance of unfair treatment mattered. They wanted to expose the company's ugly truth to the public. She nodded firmly. Meanwhile, Joo-hyuk fell into despair after learning that his mom was suffering alone, holding a one-person protest. He questioned what use it was to have two sons. In the end, they were nothing but useless, unfilial sons, ones she couldn't even rely on in a moment like this. That made him wonder how she even managed to hire a lawyer. If it was the law firm Park and Kim, a few pennies wouldn't even begin to cover the fees. John asked if he should pay a visit to the Jinspring Water Company. He even readied his daggers. Joo-hyuk realized that John clearly understood the situation. He found that admirable, but he told him not to do it. He had seen his mother's interview, and it looked like she had hired a competent lawyer. That made John sad. He had been planning to wrap everything up neatly and hand it over like a gift. Joo-hyuk decided to send money to his mother for the lawyer's fees. The 21 kilograms of magic stones he had gathered so far were worth 10 million won. And if that wasn't enough, he planned to sell the energy shield kit as well. Suddenly, he received a call from his father. He answered. His dad asked if he had seen the news. Joo-hyuk said yes, and his father told him not to worry. His mom's lawyer fees were being covered for free. Joo-hyuk was stunned. He had already been preparing to send money. His father laughed, saying he assumed Joo-hyuk wouldn't be able to gather that kind of cash so quickly. He told him not to worry about them and to focus on what he was doing. Then he mentioned that he had also received a call from Ilsung Hospital. He explained that the orthopedics department at Ilsung Hospital was running a hip joint surgery and rehabilitation program, and he had been selected. In a few days, he would be admitted. On top of that, the treatment was completely free, including hospitalization and rehab. His father said they were incredibly lucky, but Ju-hyuk began to feel uneasy. His father told him not to worry about his parents. Ju-hyuk agreed and said he would visit them soon. Ilsung Hospital was one of the top hospitals in Korea, affiliated with a major corporation. It was undeniably good news, yet something about it felt strange. After that, Min-hyuk called him. With so many bizarre things happening to the family, Ju-hyuk couldn't help but wonder what was really going on. Min-hyuk asked if he had seen their mom's interview. He said he was furious at those bastards. Their mom had worked herself to the bone, doing sales and everything else. Ju-hyuk knew that better than anyone. Min-hyuk then said he planned to give his allowance to their mom, since the lawsuit would cost a lot. Ju-hyuk reminded him that he still needed a laptop. Min-hyuk said it was fine. He had enough money to buy one even after paying his tuition. That was because he had received a scholarship. At that moment, he was standing inside the scholarship application office. Min-hyuk started to believe that good things really do happen when you live an honest life. Ju-hyuk asked where the scholarship came from. Min-hyuk replied that it was a national scholarship from the Awakener Management Administration. They handed out a large number of scholarships every year. Ju-hyuk told him to study hard. That was when his suspicion fully solidified. This wasn't heaven lending a hand. His mom's lawyer, his dad's hospital fees, Min-hyuk's scholarship, every single one of them. He was now certain it was all the work of the Awakener Management Administration. Meanwhile, Gwang-il was riding in a car when he received a call. The person on the other end said they wanted to meet. Gwang-il agreed, and even offered to pick him up so they could eat together. Gwang-il and Ju-hyuk shared a meal in a private room. Ju-hyuk asked why he had done all that. Gwang-il asked what he meant. Ju-hyuk answered. It was about his mom's lawsuit, his dad's hospital fees, and his brother's scholarship. Gwang-il calmly said it was necessary. Ju-hyuk realized he wasn't even trying to hide it. Gwang-il explained that if there was trouble at home, it would be impossible for Ju-hyuk not to worry, and if he worried, it would affect his progress in the tower. Ju-hyuk understood the logic, but he still felt uneasy that they hadn't even talked to him about it first. He knew this kind of treatment was usually reserved for the elite team, yet he was only under a standard contract. Gwang-il suddenly slammed his hand on the table. He placed a document in front of him, the Ultra Elite Contract. Then he told him to sign it immediately, the Elite Team Contract. Ju-hyuk felt completely cornered. Jo-hyuk realized that Gwang-il had come fully prepared. Still, he wasn't confident. His talent didn't feel special or outstanding to him. He was caught off guard when Gwang-il suddenly stood up. Gwang-il asked if he truly believed that, even after setting records no one had ever achieved before. Ju-hyuk was left speechless. He had no response. For someone who had cleared 24 floors in a row with an S++ rating to say something like that, he realized it sounded less like humility and more like denial. Gwang-il bowed as he spoke. Ju-hyuk gasped and told him there was no need to go that far. But Gwang-il brought up the recent incident with Hoseok. He told Ju-hyuk to join the elite team and receive the treatment he deserved, because he had earned it. Ju-hyuk quickly told him to sit down, feeling embarrassed by the attention. Gwang-il added that if he signed the contract, incidents like that would never happen again. He would receive protection on the same level as a VVIP. Ju-hyuk replied that he felt uncomfortable having people follow him all the time. On top of that, he couldn't record all of his climbs. One of the biggest reasons he hesitated was the elite contract's requirement to record sessions. He didn't want John and Go-bang to be exposed or dragged into unnecessary trouble. Gwang-il said that the video recording could be handled however Ju-hyuk wanted, and the security detail was fully negotiable. That finally caught his attention. He asked how it would be adjusted. Gwang-il explained that normally Ju-hyuk would live alone in a high-security residence. Security would only follow him when he went outside. If he wanted, they could also assign protection to his family. Ju-hyuk reminded himself not to be swayed. Then Gwang-il sweetened the deal. The moment he signed the elite contract, they would provide 2 houses, one for him and one for his family. That hit him right in the heart. There was no way to ignore an offer like that. He could already picture it, but he still told Gwang-il that while he appreciated his decisiveness, he wanted to make sure it was okay to make such a huge decision on the spot. Gwang-il could tell from his expression that he had already accepted it. He assured him there was nothing to worry about. He had full authority from the director himself. He slid the contract toward him and told him to sign there. Ju-hyuk felt excited just imagining the houses. Ju-hyuk held the pen, but then stopped. Gwang-il asked if something was wrong. Deep down, Ju-hyuk felt nervous. Things were moving too fast. He asked for more time. Gwang-il asked why. Ju-hyuk answered honestly. He wanted to get some advice before making his final decision. Gwang-il nodded and said he would wait. The next day John was summoned. He proudly declared that a special super rare assassin had arrived. His body shone with blinding, iridescent light. Ju-hyuk winced, covered his eyes, and shouted in pain as the intense glow nearly blinded him. The rank up was complete. John was now SSR. The light was so overwhelming that Ju-hyuk told him to change back. John asked if he wasn't going to call Go-bang as well. Ju-hyuk replied that before they challenged the 25th floor, there was something he needed to discuss, which was why he had called John out alone. John said that made sense. There was no way Ju-hyuk could have a proper conversation with that ignorant Go-bang anyway. Ju-hyuk then told him about meeting a team leader from the Awakener Management Administration the day before. He explained the offer he received and said he was torn between staying on the normal team or joining the elite team. He asked John what he thought. John immediately voted for the elite team. Ju-hyuk was already a national authority level player and deserved to be treated like one. Ju-hyuk wondered if it would really be okay. If he joined the elite team, they might be forced to climb to the 60th floor or even higher. John assured him it was possible. Ju-hyuk said he would train hard so he wouldn't be a burden, but John rejected that idea outright. Ju-hyuk didn't need to train himself into danger. All he had to do was live a long life, and that alone was enough. His safety was his ability. Ju-hyuk tried to argue. John repeated it. As long as Ju-hyuk lived long enough, everything else would fall into place. He explained that in the dimension he came from before being summoned, there were countless legendary SSR-grade summon entities. As long as Ju-hyuk stayed alive, the day would come when he could summon every single one of them. And when that happened, they would all swear absolute obedience to him. They would follow any order, as long as it didn't violate the 3 laws. Ju-hyuk asked if that was everything. John added that there were even demigod-class monsters that existed outside the ranking system, beings that completely surpassed human limits. That clearly intrigued our MC. Ju-hyuk asked if he could summon creatures outside the rankings like that. John answered honestly, right now he couldn't. So John told him his true path, live a long life, and keep performing random summons. That was his ultimate ability, his true finishing move. The random summon cooldown was about 1 month. That meant 12 summons a year. With good item drops, it could be even more. In 1 year, he could have 12 or more powerful summons. Of course, if his luck was terrible, it would all amount to nothing. The cooldown timer read 19 days, 10 hours, 17 minutes, and 8 seconds. John told him to firmly demand just one thing. He must insist that the decision to climb uncleared floors be made by Ju-hyuk alone, without any outside interference. Ju-hyuk was surprised. He didn't know he even had the right to decide when to challenge the upper floors. John explained that this was critical. If he didn't secure that condition, all kinds of trashy bastards would start making noise, demanding to know why he wasn't climbing the uncleared floors. And once that happened, he would be forced to move forward before he was ready. John sounded unusually intense. Ju-hyuk could tell that this advice came from a painful memory. John warned him never to let himself be dragged along. As long as that condition was guaranteed, he believed accepting government support was fine. Ju-hyuk was surprised that John supported the idea at all. He thanked him for the advice. After that, Ju-hyuk summoned Go-bang. Go-bang greeted Ju-hyuk as usual. John stood behind him and asked if he wasn't going to greet him too. Go-bang replied that a warrior does not greet just anyone. John proudly announced that he was now an SSR. He even spelled it out. Special Super Rare SSR. He went on to explain that there were 2 whole S's in front of the R, while Go-bang was just a measly R rank. Go-bang muttered that John was being mean. John snapped at him to shut up, saying there was a clear difference in their ranks, and Go-bang was just an R-rank bastard. Ju-hyuk noticed that Go-bang avoided John's gaze. With a 2-rank gap between them, even the dense Go-bang could read the atmosphere. Ju-hyuk made a mental note. The next time a rank-up rune dropped, he would give it to Go-bang. He asked if it was possible to earn a platinum badge again this time. John scoffed and said there was no need to ask. He was an SSR now. They entered the 25th floor of the Korea Black Tower. The mission was to defeat 100 orcs of any type and 1 orc chieftain within 10 hours. Ju-hyuk watched as a massive number of orcs charged toward them. He considered taking on 1 or 2 himself. John said this would be his warm-up, a celebration of becoming an SSR. He ordered Go-bang to move first and draw aggro. Go-bang immediately complied. He sprinted forward and leaped into the air. The orcs froze in confusion when they saw him descending from above. Then, John moved. The SSR struck. His speed was so extreme that only a streak of light remained. To Juhyuk, it looked like a fighter jet tearing through the battlefield. John unleashed multiple blades. They pierced straight through several orcs. Then, he activated his skill. Blade explosion. The struck orcs detonated on the spot. Even the nearby orcs were caught in the blast. This wasn't just a blade explosion anymore. It was closer to a bazooka. Several orcs charged him while his back was turned. Spears pierced through his body. The orcs grinned. Then their expressions froze. John's body dispersed into air. In the next instant, he reappeared behind them. He activated Vile Ambush and effortlessly beheaded several orcs. He looked like he was enjoying himself. The remaining orcs were terrified. They trembled in fear. John asked why they all looked so sour. Then he activated Poison Dagger. He said they were only getting started. Juhyuk realized he had to move fast before John wiped them all out. He activated Shadow Step. He rushed toward a nearby group of orcs. They all turned to face him. He remembered what John had told him, that all he needed to do was live a long life. But even so, Juhyuk still wanted to grow stronger, so that everyone who cared about him could finally stop worrying. Juhyuk charged straight at the orc. He didn't want to rely on John forever. If he wanted to keep up, he had to grow stronger, and fast. He ducked as the orc swung its blade. Then he kicked it square in the rear. The orc crashed face first into the ground. It scrambled back up almost instantly, clearly confused. Juhyuk activated the Primordial Thunderclap Staff, first form, soul-chasing Thunderbolt. He smashed the staff down on its head, crushing its skull and sending blood spraying. The orc collapsed, screaming in pain. More orcs rushed toward Juhyuk. He used Shadow Step, darting through them and striking one after another. Then his eyes widened. A notification appeared. Primordial Thunderclap Staff, second form, Cascading Thunderbolts unlocked. He felt a surge of excitement. He had unlocked the second form. The knowledge flowed into him instantly. He understood how to use it, but Cascading Thunderbolts felt entirely different. He spun his mace as he activated the second form. Several orcs charged at him, and he lunged forward while twirling the weapon. He unleashed Cascading Thunderbolts. Lightning crashed down on the orcs. The energy split into 5 streams, striking multiple targets at once. Juhyuk grinned when he realized it was an area of effect skill. John noticed the lightning and frowned, wondering when orcs learned to use thunder. Then he saw Juhyuk. His jaw dropped. His eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. He sprinted toward him at full speed. At the last second, he skidded to a stop. Tears welled up as he scolded Juhyuk for getting carried away just because he unlocked a new skill, especially when they had agreed to hunt enemies one by one on each floor. Juhyuk apologized. Then he paused. Why was he apologizing to a summoned entity? The thought annoyed him. He was tired of walking on eggshells around John. He snapped that even if he was a beta male outside the tower, inside it, he was the ultimate alpha. John calmly replied that Juhyuk's safety was their top priority. That only irritated him more. Juhyuk pointed ahead and challenged him to let the orc war chief appear. He said he'd charge straight at it and smash its skull himself. He was cut off mid-sentence by a loud crash. As if on cue, the orc war chief appeared. The moment Juhyuk saw it, he screamed for John's help. John grabbed him and bolted. Juhyuk's face turned pale. He instantly regretted not listening to John earlier. John dropped him behind Gobang and ordered them to take down the war chief immediately. The war chief stared them down. John told Juhyuk to leave it to him, while Gobang focused on protecting him. They charged forward. The war chief let out a thunderous roar. Gobang's hand began to glow. His fist slammed into the war chief's weapon. With pure strength, he bent the blade. The war chief froze in shock. Gobang didn't stop. Both fists slammed into the war chief's shoulders. Bones shattered. At the same time, John slipped behind it and activated Vile Ambush. His daggers flashed. The war chief's head fell. With that, the 25th floor was cleared. Juhyuk leveled up. His reward was a 2.5 kilogram magic stone. He achieved an S++ clear rank for the 25th floor of the Korea Black Tower. A platinum badge was awarded. He could now challenge the 26th floor. He exited the Korea Black Tower. A special perk was granted for collecting 25 platinum badges. Encore! Perk selection is now available! Juhyuk already had a good idea what this meant. The system displayed the options: trait enhancement, skill copy, random item, and summoned entity rank up. He felt like he'd hit the jackpot. He tapped the screen. His awakened trait was enhanced. He knew he'd be a complete idiot to choose anything other than trait enhancement. His status window appeared. It showed his name, his affiliation with the Korea Black Tower, and his level, now level 26. His trait was Summon, allowing up to 3 summons. At the moment, he had John and Gobang. His trait skills were Designated Summon, Random Summon, and Summon Release. His common skills included entering the tower once per day and a tower inventory. His combat skills were Shadow Step and Primordial Thunderclap Staff. He felt a rush of joy when he saw that his simultaneous summon limit had increased to 3. Including himself, they could now form a solid 4-man party. There were about 18 days left on the random summon cooldown. He wondered who the 3rd summon would be. But for now, he had other things to deal with. He asked the 2 of them if they wanted to eat. John said he wanted tteokbokki. Juyok was surprised. John couldn't handle spicy food. John declared that he was SSR now, and the days of being weak to spice were over. Juyok doubted that and wished him luck. The tteokbokki arrived. Juyok praised them for their great work on the 25th floor and told them to eat. Gobang finished a bowl easily. John asked if it wasn't spicy. Gobang said it wasn't spicy at all. If anything, it tasted sweet. John didn't see it that way. He ate 1 piece, and his tongue caught fire. He collapsed on the floor, looking like he'd been poisoned. Gobang calmly told Juyok that the assassin would probably die soon, so he should throw him out and summon someone else. Now that Juyok had reached the 25th floor, he began to think. Maybe it was finally time to tell his family. Later that day, Juyok went to his family's home and brought premium beef with him. Minyok asked where he got the money for it. Juyok leaned in and whispered that he'd explain later. His mother was shocked that he spent so much. She asked if he still had the receipt so he could return it. His father told her to let it be. They had been through a lot lately, and their son was just trying to do something nice. He suggested that she simply enjoy the meal. They gathered around the dining table and chatted. His father admitted the meat really did taste premium. His mother joked that the men in the house truly loved meat. She even brought out some fruit for them. Juyok felt relieved. Everything had worked out. His mom's lawsuit, his dad's treatment, all of it. Then, he took a breath and said he had something important to tell them. He told them that he had awakened, and that he was now working as a player. The room went silent. They all thought he was joking. When he realized they didn't believe him, he knew there was only one thing left to do. He reached out to Gwang-il. The next day, they were driven in a luxury car toward a towering building. Juyok's mother asked if her son had truly awakened. Gwang-il confirmed it and told them that Juyok was now a precious asset of the nation. His father and brother were stunned when they heard him called an elite player. Gwang-il led them upstairs. Juyok took out a black card and scanned it. The doors opened, revealing their new family home. Alright, that's it for today's story. If you want the weekly chapter updates for this series, those will now be uploaded on my second channel, Manhwa Updater. So if you don't want to miss what happens next, make sure to check it out and join the update gang. Thanks for watching, stay cool, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.